Ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between, welcome to CromulentWrestling for This Is a Revolution, your weekly RevPro podcast. With myself, George, and my good friend, Mr. Dave DeMark. How are you doing, sir? How was your all-in week?
Really, really bloody good, mate. Yeah, absolutely loved it. Mad, like super busy. Probably in a different way to those people that were just wrestling show after wrestling show after wrestling show. Because I had some work in there. I had my dad's funeral in there, so it was all a bit like going. I went to Cardiff for Dynamite and Collision, drove home and was at work sort of like 5 hours later for just GCSE results, which is like a mad kind of real roller coaster, because for every kid that you can give a big cuddle to and a high five, there's another kid where you're talking about resit exams and how it's not the end of the world and how we can still do stuff. Then I had my dad's funeral the next day, which is obviously not great. Straight into the cop box, straight into All In, and then chill yesterday. So it was an emotional roller coaster, but two of the best wrestling shows I've ever been to in All In and the cop box. So I am very, very happy. Yeah, how about nice. You? You did even more. You did a lot more than me. What did you do?
I think in terms of actual wrestling shows, yeah, I did two more than you. So obviously we had Cardiff on Wednesday, which, do you know, that does not even feel like it was a week ago, right? That feels like it was about a month ago. I'm not even kidding. Even up until yesterday, I was like, how was that just last week? Like, it's crazy to me. I think I even said it on Sunday. Yeah, so I did that, and then I did Riot Cabaret on Friday night, which was, it was so much fun. Like, it was what I hoped it would be and more.
But like, what everybody says about Riot Cabaret, it's always just it's just so much fun. You should go because it's just so different and such an enjoyable experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's... Best way I can describe it is everyone there is authentically themselves, right? I've seen people dressed at these shows that I've not seen dressed at other wrestling shows. Maybe whether it's more of a conservative crowd or people are a bit worried about acceptance. But here, no, everyone they were letting their flags fly whatever way that flag blew. And it was wonderful to see, because it was just so many people able to go in there and be themselves, enjoy wrestling.
Really inclusive, is it?
Really, really, really inclusive. Yeah, and it was great because it just felt like everything I've heard about the atmosphere of Riot Cab and what it stands for, you literally saw it in the queue right before you went in, and it was so cool.
The venue looks wicked. Like, whenever I see photos and Insta clips and stuff, it just looks like so different to everywhere else.
It is.
And the royal boxes as well, just so kind of like going to the theatre rather than going to the wrestling.
Yeah, and this was a weird thing, was I was set up on the stage. So not only was I in a theatre, I was looking out from the direction of the stage at the theatre, which is such a unique view that, going back to when I was 15 and appeared on stage a few times, that was the only other time that I've seen that kind of view out there before. So it was really weird, boxes up there and there's up there, and I could see I could see the other bits of the crowd up there. It was so odd, but it was wonderful. Like you said, a great venue for wrestling. And it was just such a fun show. Nothing, you had the proper serious matches, blood feud matches, and then you had a match which started in the arena and ended up on the street and on a boat and on the way to Waterloo.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Final ending in the arena, and then Nina Samuels did a celebration ceremony which Thunder Rosa interrupted and did a take on Livin' La Vida Loca, Livin' La Thunder Rosa or something like that. It was great because she had all the words on the screen. You could tell she wasn't memorizing it; she was looking up at the screen, but added to the fun. And yeah, I came out of that. My wife was loving it. What's even funnier is the stage. So the setup we have at Southampton, where it's quite a deep stage, and you got rows of chairs. Well, here how it is you get little cabaret tables, and then you get chairs around
round tables, right?
Yeah. So we got there quite early. We got there about an hour and a half before doors. Maybe actually 2 hours. I think it was shoot 2 hours. I worked to my wife and told her that it was an hour and a half, just so it didn't seem quite so long. Usually my way when we have to get in a long queue, and we were in quite quick, and still the front tables were gone. So but I got this really good spot because you had these tables, you could move your chairs around a bit, and you've got like a red carpet going down the middle of the stage with a little velvet rope. So I was sat right there, so I managed to get some good pictures and actually see them as they come out and stuff like that, which was really, really cool. But yeah, just look round and see some pictures. But I would highly recommend it to anyone. My only thing I do not like about Riot Cabaret after that show is that they run on Tuesday nights, and which makes it nigh impossible for me to get to a show at any other time. But no, that was great.
Yeah,
and
I can't. I mean, you know me, I'm RevPro exclusive in the sense that I like to keep. I know that all these wrestlers work all different companies and that they're all different people in all different companies, but for simplicity and for me to fully immerse myself, I like to think that who I'm seeing is the only character that they're portraying. Plus, if I went to any more wrestling, my wife would actually leave me.
Yeah.
And Tuesday nights, just absolutely, there's no way I can get to London on Tuesday night and then teach on the next day without getting back at silly times.
Yeah, because they've announced Thunder Rosa versus Nina Samuels for the next show, and it was because they put up on Instagram. They were like, "Oh, you're not going to want to miss after tonight our next show. Buy your tickets now." Very much the way RevPro did with Summer Sizzler, and I was like, And then the show was called Thunder Road, and I said to my wife, "Have they got Thunder Rosa?" And that's what I was expecting, a video on screen, but for her to actually come out and do it, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And this is what All In Weekend's about, right? All these companies being able to work.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean, because I had to deal with a very heel subculture, and also had to deal with
3-on-1 attacking Oku, right?
Yeah, and then I also had to deal with babyface greedy souls. I was not prepared for that, but I quite like it. I think at one point,
I can imagine, for a long time, I couldn't imagine them working babyface at all because they're just arseholes. But they're really bloody lovely fellas. So I can add and it's often the case, isn't it? It doesn't matter how much of a dickhead people are on screen. They're always super lovely, in real life. Just good people trying to entertain people. So yeah,
absolutely.
Did you enjoy All In?
Yes, All In was fucking hell. That was incredible. It's always one of those things that I need to watch it back before I can really give my
I'm really looking
feeling,
forward to watching it back. Because going to watch it back with the kids on Friday.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but as great as it is watching these matches, I feel in those environments, I feel in the moment, but I don't feel that afterwards in the way that I do if I watch a great match on TV. Oh my god, that was amazing. Because when we're in a different venue like the 229 or the 1865, you're so close to the action, you can see everything, you can take it all in. But in these big stadiums, there's everything going on around you. There's people talking, you've got all of this. So it's kind of but everything I remember of it, so great. And look, you were in a section near me, and because we saw when we went down, actually, when we saw you guys. And I was
looking for you and I couldn't see you. And Wayne and Emma, who I travelled down with, were in our sort of section as well on the pitch, and I couldn't see them, but I was I know on the map we were all quite close, but I think so many people, isn't it?
I think our section, from when I saw you, Wayne and Emma, our section was next to your one, I think, and then your one was next to them. I think that's roughly a kind of like that, I think, from what you said. So there's a bit, so where our seats were, I didn't realise would be as close as we were. So there's only, I thought it was a whole pitch section in the front row section, then another. So I thought we'd be back by the hoardings. And it wasn't, as you know, it was a couple of rows in the front. And then we were row C of the one we were in. So if you watch
I legit didn't think I'd be able to see any of it. I thought I'd be watching it all on the screen.
Same.
But that I'd have the atmosphere of being close to it. And when we sat down, I could literally, the only thing I couldn't see was if they were wrestling outside the ring. anything that was like in the ring, you could just have. I just had this perfectly clear view, like through the gap between people.
Yeah,
and I'm so glad because it was so special.
Yeah, it was great, and we made our AEW pay-per-view television debut by managing to appear on screen at some point. That's how close we actually were. We actually managed to appear on screen at times. So I've already had someone text me going, "I saw you on screen at All In," and we watched it back. So if you watch back the 8-man tag, which you can watch on Triller TV. You will see a bit where we're in the top right corner and you will see me and the wife looking off to another direction. I'm going like that, pointing. And that's because at that point she was saying to me, "So where is it Dave, Emma and Wayne are sitting?" I went, "Well, based on what we're saying, they're over there." So you'll be able to pinpoint me pointing in what direction you guys were. But yeah, it was wonderful. Very feel good ending to the show. And I'm just going to say it. Buddy Danielson stole the show at the end in that ring.
Right. Like I can't remember if we've done a pod since. I remember we were on a pod and I was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to All In this year." Made the decision, and then so I saw a few people on the day, and they were like, "We listened to your podcast, and you said you weren't coming. Like, what changed?" And I don't know if we've done a podcast since where I've mentioned it or not. But literally, what changed was Bryan Danielson. The storyline and the idea that I'm either going to never get to watch him live again. I've never seen him before. So I'm either going to see him retire or I'm going to see him in the championship. Mm-hmm. So then I started looking at tickets, but I didn't want to go on my own and just sit like in the heavens and not be able to see anything and not be able to experience it with anyone. And then a couple of friends who I go to RevPro in Sheffield, they had a ticket for sale. So it just kind of everything just married together really, really nicely.
Nice.
Enjoyed the whole show. I really, really enjoyed because I had some criticisms about All In last year, and I think I was sort of like I kept them to myself quite a lot because people. I never want to be like I never want to complain and moan. I like to be positive, but I did feel like there were some bits which didn't really work as well, and some of the match orderings meant that some matches felt a bit flat because they were on after something that was just too big for it. I feel like they got all of that kind of like pretty much spot on this year, taking out the Stadium Stampede match and putting in the gauntlet, and then giving us a gauntlet that had Ricochet in it and Nigel McGuinness, and seeing Zack Sabre Jr. and Nigel McGuinness together and stuff like that was just magical. So I very much enjoyed my All In, and then you went to Progress yesterday as well, right?
I did go to Progress yesterday, and you know what? It was a nice end to the weekend. If I'm honest, I'm not sure if I'd do it next time. Not anything like Progress just being a show after All In, because it was tiring as all hell getting up after the culmination of what that emotional day was, and then going to another wrestling show after. But it was one of those ones when you were there, your bum was in the seat. It was good fun.
Yeah.
So got to see a Leon Slater match, got to see Rhio, got to see Luke Jacobs, Lycos, all those kind of people. So and it went by in a flash, actually. Bless them, they did have a lot of technical hitches yesterday. They had no working music at one point. After the music had played, like 2 minutes beforehand, then their bottom rope and turnbuckles detached after every single match for like the first 3 matches. And the ring announcer, I can't remember, Tom Campbell from Cultaholic, he just walked past the rope at one point. I think he leaned against it and it dropped down. So they had to take a very impromptu interval. I saw the cameraman saying, "We have to." I was like, "Oh, okay." And so as we were out kind of at merch tables and whatnot, Lycos and Lycos 2 were literally running ropes to stress test this ring. Quite unlike anything I've ever seen at an event before. And then Tom himself certainly indulged in festivities of the weekend with lots of screaming, shouting, beers, self-admission, so lost his voice and had to give up his spot of ring announcing about 2/3 of the way through as well. So it was one of those shows where they were plagued with difficulties all the way through, and fair play to them for just facing the challenges head on and just going, well, of course, this is what we're dealing with. And they just took it all in their stride, and a lot of respect for how they dealt with it. And it was a good wrestling show at the end of the day.
Happy days.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
I get
So
what you mean. I remember I'd forgotten you were going, and when you texted me yesterday, and I realised you were texting me from like your journey to progress,
mhm.
I kind of thought to myself like, God, I'm glad I'm just because I literally like I did sod all yesterday.
Yeah.
Like I watched Match of the Day, and had a fry up and just chilled with the kids and just I'm not sure if any of us got dressed yesterday. We basically just stayed in our onesies like and hoodies and pajamas all day, and it was so chill.
Yeah,
So yeah,
nice.
when you said about going, I was like, oh god. But then to be fair, I got your message saying like Zozaya's here, and it was like, oh okay, cool. Like
Yeah, yeah.
that's a nice moment for you.
That was lovely. Like, it was a match that I wouldn't say I was really enthused about going into it, and then they added Zozaya into it, and I was like, oh right, cool, okay. Like, you could put Zozaya versus a broom, and I'd be like, yeah, cool, let's go and watch that.
Yeah,
Like, had
you
the
get like a special affiliation for people as well, don't you? When you see them as often as we have seen.
Mhm.
Like I've seen Zozaya 10 times in the space of 4 months. Like that's a
Yeah,
lot. And like he's always about afterwards as well, so you get to speak to him quite a lot. Like and he's such a lovely
yeah,
fella, and it's
yeah. I think
yeah.
this
So then when
weekend.
you see people getting opportunities and you see them doing well in other places, it always makes me smile.
Absolutely. This weekend, I got two Zozaya matches that I wasn't expecting because he turned up at Riot Cab as well for an impromptu match against Leon Slater. So
Yeah,
both of their
nice.
matches that they've had, I've been lucky enough to be there live for,
Yeah,
which was great getting that match. But my wife, she said to me when we were waiting there, she was like, "Is Leon Slater on the card tonight?" I was like, "No, why?" And she went, "I've just seen him go in the side door." Now, to kind of put it into perspective, right, what you would have to do to be able to see that is be like when you were outside the 1865. And for those who don't, I'm talking about this long path, right, takes you down to where the bins are, which is about quite distance down from the door. We were down there, and she literally saw him sneaking around the side of the building. She is eagle-eyed, I
nice.
tell you. And I
Eagle-eyed. Yeah.
completely forgot about that. And when it was Leon, I was like, oh, is it going to be this person? Is it going to be that? Like, not expecting anyone massive. And yeah, Zazare comes out. I was like, okay, I'll take that. So, yeah, lovely,
Happy days,
lovely
mate.
fella as well. And managed to get another photo with him, had a chat with him. Bless him. There's a bit of a
So
running
humble,
joke.
isn't he? Like more
Yeah,
humble than he has any rights to be, given
yeah.
how much talent he's got.
So there's a bit of a running joke I've got with him now that every time I try and buy a T-shirt from him, he keeps telling me he's going to get a card reader. So every time I go, I
Yeah,
go, "Have you got your card reader?" And he was going, "Oh no, fuck!" And he was hitting the canvas, and he was like, "Next time, I will have it next time." Bless him, yeah. And a bit of a thing I found out is apparently he only charges £1 for autographs because he doesn't want to charge people anymore. So, but I found that there's a
I
few of
saw
them.
that today, and I was like, "Is that a joke? Like
No,
a pound? Like
that's a
you
real
might as well
thing.
just not charge them and just do it for free."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. But I found that there's definitely a few of them that are undervaluing. Like Leon Slater has these trading cards that he'll sell, and they're like proper Leon Slater made trading cards, £5 for that with a signature on it. I'm like, you're leaving money on the table, mate. Like if he said to me,
yeah,
five
like
pound
no,
for the card,
I don't think
yeah.
you expect anything at a merch stand to be less than a tenner, do you? Really?
No, and like it's certainly signed. Like if I see
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
I'd be expecting £5 for the card, £5 for the card with signature. Like that was it. But yeah, so like that was it. I was like picking up little bits over the weekend. The one that got me was the trap that I said I fall into sometimes, where I ask how much something is and go,
Yeah.
I can't say no now. It was with Luke Jacobs for a Northwest Strong towel, which set me back £15 for a towel, but it'll be fine. I
To be
went up.
fair, that is like that's a cool bit of merch, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like, there's
yeah,
it's I've always think the towel is like synonymous with him.
yeah,
Yeah, he can
yeah.
start selling those bandanas now.
Oh, yeah, he can. Yeah, he can.
The
And
dead or alive bandana. We
absolutely,
should,
mate.
yeah.
Well,
So
I was going to say, should we crack on
we
with the
should
show from Saturday?
get to the
Yeah.
copper box, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, what a wonderful day that was in total. Like right from getting there before for the meet and greets, and I was chatting with a guy who he lives in Long Island, and he'd flown over again this year. So he came last year, came again this year. I was chatting with a guy from Croatia as well. They were chatting with a friend of the show, Will Warrener, who is the absolute madman of the crowd. Gives Gabe Kidd a run for his money, I can tell you that. But I was chatting with all those guys, and then we all went down into meeting all of the wrestlers, and it was such a lovely experience, and just felt really like big. But yeah, then we got to the event, and first thing I did when I got in there, but I was going to say we kicked off with the events. I kicked off by going find myself a nice drink and buying myself a program, which I sat and read part of before the show. Lovely little read there, Mr. Dave the Mark. Congratulations on another great program. It was nice just sitting reading those words, even though it's probably words I've heard so many times
this is
by
it,
now.
right?
Yeah,
it's funny. I went to write a program. I went to write a preview for DaveTheMark.com to post before the coffee box, and I was like, "Do you know what? At this point, I've done the Cromulent Wrestling preview. I've done the Revolution Pro Wrestling preview with Andy Quilton on YouTube, and I've written the program. At this point, if you want to know what I think about it, either go and listen to one of them or buy the program. I'm not giving it out for free this time. I'm not giving it out for no get back. But it was like, blimey, what is there left to say? Let's just go and absolutely enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I feel like just before we go, we'll go through it match by match, but this was several notches above last year's anniversary, which was by far the best anniversary show they'd ever done. Most of the anniversary shows were on RevPro on demand. I don't think they're all on there, but most of them are. Go back and watch them; they're really good. But last year's anniversary, obviously, being the copper box, a bigger crowd, a bigger budget, a bigger kind of stature in terms of card. But this year, the stories outweighed the stories of last year. The matches delivered more than they delivered last year, and that's saying something because last year was obviously incredible. I feel like this show overall was better than High Stakes, which is like really saying something because obviously High Stakes had the 6-star match with Oku and Ospreay. But I think if you go match by match comparisons, I think there is more. Like if you were to do like a star rating for each match, not Meltzer star ratings, your star ratings, whatever you judge matches on. If you were to do that for High Stakes and to do it for the anniversary show and add up how many stars you've awarded, I think you would have awarded more stars for the anniversary show than you would have for High Stakes, even with Ospreay and Oku. I just feel like the lowest bar on Saturday was much higher than the lowest bar for High Stakes, and the highest bar wasn't actually that far off the highest bar for High Stakes. So I was absolutely delighted. I don't know about you. I feel like as someone who's so invested in RevPro, I feel a little bit of anxiety when I go to these big RevPro shows. I don't really feel it at York Hall because I feel like York Hall's kind of got like a pretty. It's kind of like all the hardcore fans from all the different venues together in York Hall, plus then a load of people who like follow RevPro a bit more casually. And there's enough hardcore fans to kind of like make it super positive. For example, Hardcore Country would never happen in York Hall. That would never ever happen in York Hall because it would get snuffed out immediately. But obviously it did happen last year at the Copper Box, and it could have happened this Saturday. There's always that potential when you've got, I think it was just under 4,000 people there. Just under, which is incredible. You've then got probably less than 1,000 people who are, the 229, 1865, the network, like they're like your 3 regular RevPro shows, as in like there's between 6 and 11 of them a year, and there's like 200, maybe 250 people at each one of those shows. So if every single one of those people is there, you've still got less than 1,000 people, which means you must have around 3,000 people who are a bit more casually interested, whether that's they go to a few shows a year or they've never been to a show and they're turning up purely because All In's the next day. So when I'm sitting there, I'm always listening to all the conversations that are happening around me, and I'm just kind of like, I just want everybody to enjoy the show because I want, you know, I don't want there to be any negativity. And I felt an overwhelming positivity from all directions at the Copper Box. I was sitting next to 2 German lads who were they're GWF fans. They go to all the GWF shows, and they've gone to RevPro for All In weekend, but they're also going to RevPro this weekend in Berlin for the GWF shows, which is wicked. There were like literally people from all over the world like around us. So it was like really, the positivity was so like overwhelming. It made me, I always say it's weird because maybe it's my age, maybe it's because I'm a teacher, maybe it's because I'm really invested in like young people being successful. But I was just so incredibly proud of everybody, from like your Lucia Lee's and Dynamite Lee Dawson's doing ring crew work, to like the contenders that were like juggling the camera's work with protecting people from dives and stuff like that, all the way up to, you know, Oka and Jacobs headlining. It was just like truly special, and it made me incredibly proud to be like even the tiniest part of, and to just like a massive fan of, because it sounds daft, but there's nothing worse than when you're so invested in something and then when you love something, you want other people to love it. Like, it's natural. So when you're massively invested in something and then other people take a punt on like looking at what you're invested in, if it turns out to be a dud, it makes you look like a muppet, and it just undermines everything you've ever said. It's a bit like, let's say pick a random TV show, Big Bang Theory. Let's say you're a massive Big Bang Theory fan, and you're saying to your friends, "Oh, you have to watch the show. It's amazing. It's the funniest show ever." And there's a new episode on Thursday night at 7:00. Let's all watch it together. And then it happens to be the like crappiest Big Bang Theory episode ever. And all you're doing is sitting there being like, "Oh, it's normally way funnier than this. I don't know why it wasn't as good this week." Like, nobody wants to be in that position.
Yeah.
So when you've got all these people there, you want everybody to come out and say, "Do you know what? If you didn't like that, you didn't like it. But that means you don't like RevPro," because that was a proper RevPro show. Obviously, there might be people that go away being like, "Oh, I really enjoyed it, but it was a bit long," and not all RevPro shows are that long. It might have been too much for people in that sense, but it is RevPro's WrestleMania. It is their All In. So you are literally going to try and get every single person a spot on that card, all the way down to Leighton Buzzard walking Cameron Khai to the ring, and like emphasis on walking him to the ring, which like, I almost cried at that point, just seeing the fella come out, and like he did it so confidently and like an absolute boss. So yeah, just a huge success. And I shall stop ranting, and we can. I'll hear your thoughts, and then we can go into the matches.
No, very much a lot of what you just said there, my friend. I mean, first of all, I just want to note it on video that Dave did go and record a preview of Andy Quildan as well. He's moving on to high, I think. No, a serious well done to Dave for that, because
Thank you,
look,
I appreciate it. It was lovely to get the chance.
I bet it was, and I know, as someone who talks about RevPro with the reverence that you do for it, that I know that that's not something you'd have taken lightly. I know that's something that you would have been feeling the nerves about, and rightly so. And you went and fucking smashed it out of the park, mate. So, like, serious, well done there.
Thank you, mate.
Yeah, the show. I know what you mean about what you're saying about like the pride aspect. And granted, I mean, I've only been properly in for the last year. Like I've always been in on RevPro to a degree, but last year I've been properly in, and I've said like it just feels like I don't like using the term home promotion, but it's the promotion that resonates with me the most of anywhere around the world for a variety of factors. And I think that intimate nature is another one of them. So like you said, when you are coming to these bigger shows, and I had it with, I think it was Uprising last year. I wouldn't say it was a dud, but it was a show that for me, where it delivered against expectation was a bit lower. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. So when you've got these shows, you kind of go, I really hope like they've got all the potential here. Is it going to be that, or is it maybe just not going to quite reach it? And then you've got a lot of people around you who, if we can convert these into RevPro fans, great, because it means great stuff for the company. I'm sad to say I did have some hardcore country people behind me, but I'm very pleased to say that very quickly, not just me, but a few people did say, shut the fuck up, and didn't hear it again.
Were they the ones doing the Sunshine Machine?
I think they tried that, and they tried Hechicero as well, and again, they were getting...
Oh, did that? Well, that must have been nipped in the bud quite quickly, because that didn't make it to where I was.
Yeah, that one stopped very quickly, because a few of us were just shouting, "No, shut the fuck up," and stuff to varying degrees. We also had a very enthusiastic group of Germans behind us as well, which is great. Like you said, the traveling fan is great to see, and they were properly into it as well. So yeah, lovely stuff.
This is it, like like you have to, for the company to grow. There's like, I think there's like three kind of layers to like the fandom growing. You have to draw in more people who have never been to a RevPro show before.
Mhm.
You then need to draw in people who have come to like the odd RevPro show before, but have never been regularly, and turn them into like regulars for wherever they live.
Mhm.
So, for example, if you are someone who's flown in for a show at the Copper Box, can they get them to fly in for a show that's at your call or a Crystal Palace? And then you have the people that go regularly in their town or in their part of the circuit, and getting them invested to the point where they want to go and travel to go to another town to see them. And it's like, each of those things builds up that audience, and it's something that whenever people get on the back of like casual fans and stuff, I always kind of make the point of being like, we were all that person once, right? Like I'm sure that the first time I ever went to a show, and I remember going to my first show was High Stakes 2022, and it was Sunshine Machine versus Aussie Open, and I remember cheering for Aussie Open when everyone else was cheering for Sunshine Machine, which I would never ever do now. Like, I'm very much a cheer the good guys, boo the bad guys. The only time I've ever not done it was literally the show we run last week, where we were talking about Will Kaven versus Eric Dillinger. But on that day, it felt like it was completely okay, because Eric Dillinger Dillinger's a heel in America, and he came out presented as a heel, and it was kind of like a match where they worked out their dynamics within the ring based on the crowd reactions. So they Eric Dillinger softened up when he heard Will Kaven getting booed a lot. But then when Will Kaven was getting some cheers, he softened up a little bit, the heel side of it as well. But then on Saturday, he was 100% a heel. So I will be 100% going back to booing him and flipping him off. So yeah, but my point is, like, there would have been people there at your call being like, what's this dickhead cheering Aussie Open? Like, you should be cheering for Sunshine Machine. Obviously doesn't know the product. And it's like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
But you learn. I think that the big difference is when people just choose to do that because they like going into business for themselves. So yeah, was it so overall a good vibe?
Overall, very good vibe. For me, like, I kind of just, and this is very much a personal preference, I think I would have had one fewer match. Now, I don't know which one that would have been, and maybe a bit of an interval. I think the show would have benefited from that. But as we've said, like when we're looking at like big shows from big companies, this is the big show. Therefore, just going all the way through is a norm with these big shows. And I think the only reason I'm saying that is because I'm so invested. I want to see every second of what's being presented to me, and that's it.
Yeah, it's
and that's
interesting. So I watched it back in full today, and was trying to watch it like with a bit more of a kind of analytical eye, like no longer caught up in the moment of it. And I was thinking about, would an interval benefit? I think a danger of an interval in a venue that size is actually getting everybody back in their seats. I think back to what was there was a show recently. I can't think which one it was. I felt like it was at York Hall, but I didn't get to Sizzler. So the last York Hall I was at was Fantasticomania. But where the first match after the interval, there were still loads of empty seats for, because people were like slow to get back from the merch and slow to get back from the bar. And obviously, whichever show it is I'm thinking of, I think it was Coventry, actually. I think it was Coventry.
Okay, yeah.
And that's only got like a few hundred people there. So I can see why they didn't, and also the fact that it's such a long event. And then it's like, okay, would people's of attention benefited from one less match? Maybe, but what match are you going to take off? Who are you going to? Because like, if you were going to do it based on like which match wasn't essential to stories, Dijak and Gabe Kidd.
Probably,
but then like Dijak and Gabe Kidd are like two big names that lots of people were excited to see. And the one thing that I was really pleased with, I didn't feel a single lull in the whole evening. Like, they built, I feel like Andy sequenced it perfectly. The way that it was like Ethan and Connor opening the show in terms of like the main card of the show, probably the match on there where the fewest people know exactly what's going on and who they are. Then the next step was Zozaya and Ricky Knight. Again, not everybody's going to know who Zozaya is. Then you've got the Dante Martin pop, the ELP pop, and you've got that Cruiserweight match. You've then got Ishii. You've then got the Gisele Shaw pop, plus the pure carnage of that Cuthroat Collective match. And then every match after that had one of those big names in it. And you'd say maybe Sunshine Machine and GYV were in the hardest spot of the night, because a lot of that is the story, and Sunshine Machine are a British and European indie name. They're not Mina Shirakawa and Dani Luna, like two known names like around the wrestling world, but they just fucking smashed it, and they absolutely like leaned into their story. The little video package at the start was perfect for it. So I thought it sequenced brilliantly. Sure, where could we possibly start the show?
Well, you know what, Dave?
Grado.
Yes, well, you know what? Before we start, I just want to do something a little bit different here. I want to do a bit of shilling, mate. I want to do that little bit of shilling. So before we get on to
away,
this, and Dave talks about Grado of all people at RevPro, I just want to kind of say to people, we are going to be making a really big push with Cromulent Wrestling. This is a revolution, as well as other things I've got going on in the channel, and got plans for the channel going forward for the year. But especially on this podcast, we are going to be making a really big push to get some names and people involved from the wrestling world doing things with this channel, whether it's pushing for people to come on and do some interviews with us, pushing for people to come and do guest spots on this podcast. I'm not going to go into it. I'm just giving you that little tease, but we have got some irons in the fire, which may come, may not immediate, but we are happy with kind of how things are progressing with this podcast. We are looking to get people involved, and we just want to give you guys bang for your buck. And that buck is a watch on YouTube, but it's also subscribe. So please, if this idea of getting people on board, getting interviews with people from the British wrestling scene, and who knows, one day maybe further afield, we've got big ambitions here. please consider going on to YouTube, giving us a subscribe. I think our last video gained us 4 subscribers, which I don't think we've had that many since our first opening weeks from the channel. So we are building up very, very slowly. I'd love to hit that 100 mark at some point, and we're almost halfway there. We have a lot of people who watch. The videos are doing well. So please do just give us a subscribe, give us a like, share, comment on everything that we do. Go to davethemark.com, read every article, and then get another web browser up and go and read it on there. Boost those numbers, kickstart the algorithms, get people talking about us, because if there's one thing I learned over the weekend from speaking with people, they are really liking what we do. You guys are loving what we do. So please just do whatever you can to help kickstart that algorithm so more people like you can get involved with this. Now, Dave, Grado.
Grado? Were you like, I wonder if anybody had Grado on their bingo card.
I did not.
But I really enjoyed it.
Yes,
I thought it was fun. And it was just, it's what a pre-show should be, right? Like, just a nice little pop, bit of silliness, bit of fun, and then a match which developed storylines and gave you like the good feel-good moment of Josh James pinning Brendan White. Like, I don't think we could have asked for anything more from that at all. I thought everybody that was in that match looked good from it. There's loads coming out of it because, like, you know, I'm guessing if you're watching this, you know the results. But if you haven't, a spoiler.
Yeah, spoilers.
Sunshine Machine won the tag championships, and the last person to pin either member of Sunshine Machine was David Francisco. So you've got David Francisco and Golden Boy Santos who can come out of this saying we deserve a title shot. You could then have Josh James and Sharp Samuels turning around and saying, well, we pinned your team at the copper box. So if anyone deserves a title shot, it's us. You've then got Youngblood who can turn around and say, well, we were on the winning team too. Just because Josh James got the pinfall doesn't mean that we're any less the victors. And then you've got Brendan White and Danny Jones who, you know, are, dare I say, so confident and arrogant and egotistical that they will find a way to say that they should be, regardless of everything else, the number 1 contenders, because that wasn't even a tag team match. That was 8-man. It's not the same thing. And if you're going to look at the best tag team in that match, the most highly decorated tag team in that match, it is Greedy Souls. So, like, loads of good stuff coming out of it, and just like a really nice way of opening the show. And like, when we talk about like proud moments, seeing like Santos, who only debuted in RevPro 4 months ago, that when he wrestled in Spain for RevPro, prior to that there was no discussion about him working any other dates, but he did a good job and he impressed and he got asked to come back, and he did a good job and he got asked to come back, and it's developed from there. Francisco and Josh James have been grinding for years, so like absolutely they deserve their spot. Greedy Souls should have been on the Copper Box card last year, like they absolutely should have been. So they kind of got like robbed of their match last year for the benefit of trying to avoid too many multi-man matches, I'm assuming would be the justification. They got their pop of coming out and having the last laugh at the end of the tag match last year, but they got to be there this year. Youngblood, who have been working so hard, like, and are on excursion with RevPro, and Shah, like, literally, he wrestled the first ever RevPro show, and he's still I think he's even hungrier and enjoying it even more now than he was then. Like, he's one of those people who like I really admire and I take inspiration from, because he's got such a lust for life, a point in his career where he doesn't need to be doing it anymore. And it's you know, what makes you get up and go again? Like literally, like tonight, whilst we're talking now, he's running a London School of Wrestling class that's sold out, because he's literally put a post up this morning saying, just because the Copper Box is over, don't mean we stop. Get down to London School of Wrestling. Let's do a session together, and it's a sold out session. So absolute legend. Yeah, really enjoyable, mate. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. Interestingly, did this actually make it onto the recording, or was this a traditional?
It did. Yeah, I was surprised because last year the the Battle Royal wasn't. So if you watch the last year's anniversary show, it starts with Dan Maloney and Leon Slater.
Yeah, cool.
But the Battle Royals on the YouTube channel for free. But this year, no, they started the very opening of the recording is Grado or Francesca attempting to do her announcement and Grado being like, no.
Yeah.
They don't announce it on the back, which was my terrible Scottish accent. Apologies if I've offended any Scottish people, especially my cromulent host.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Grado offended me on Friday night when on the way to Riot Cab, I spotted him and Shah heading to the same Sainsbury's as we were, and as I was grabbing myself a drink, so was Grado. And did he reach for the Iron Brew? No, he didn't. But at the
he's not a true Scot.
Well, at the merch table later, there he was with a can of Iron Brew. So I always forgiven at that point. But no, it's good funny because Grado is one of those ones for me that I always feel like the right place and the right time for him, right? So, and I'm not being rude when I say this, but a lot of people were trying to manifest Grado into a main card match at All In last year, right? AEW being a company that have considerable amounts of talents, and while Grado is one of those well-known names on the Brit Wrest scene, people kind of were saying, well, this is your only option. It's like, no, you've got the guys like your Shah Samuels, people like that, who deserve it just as much as well. So last year, I kind of like, I had this, like, my defenses came up a bit whenever I heard Grado, right? Because I had this image of something being taken away from people who I felt at the time probably were more deserving at that point, without being rude. And this year, kind of the same kind of things would come up, and I was like, not sure. And then I saw him at Riot Cabaret on Friday. I'm like, that was perfect. Like, you got the Madonna entrance, you got to enjoy all of that, the fun aspect of it. So I was like, cool, that for me was fun. I loved that. So then when I heard him on Saturday, I was like, really? At RevPro? Right? But I checked my attitude straight away, right? Because RevPro is also a place that Hornswoggle has been and performed at. People like Colt Cabana, who also have comedy leanings, have appeared at. And when I think of RevPro and I think of like professional wrestling at its best, I'm sometimes can allow myself to get carried away with, especially with the level of in-ring, the way that's gone up over the last year or so. Find myself being a little bit elitist at times, right? And I need to check that attitude, because Andy Quilden knows what works, and he knew that having Grado coming out to that song would do what it needed to do. Me included, we were all sat there clapping along, we were singing, we were getting into it. And at the end of the night, it was just a really good feel-good moment. And you know what? Fair play to the guy, because he's been going around, he's been doing all these shows for years and years and years. And he's not going to be a guy that comes in and wrestles regularly for RevPro, you'd think, right? But that moment for him, what I liked about it is it was a moment for him that wasn't taking away from anyone. It was enhancing everything and everyone. Right? Yeah, and
you got the Grado experience, but you still got the RevPro match.
Exactly, and
it's not like it suddenly became a 10-man tag, and suddenly it's like, hold on, this made loads of like canon sense in story, and now Grado's in it, and it doesn't make any sense. So you got all the magic of Grado and all the fun that he brings and all the like genuinely, like, I was laughing away with his little exchanges with Harv, and then when he was getting like bullied by Brendan and that, like, it was brilliant. But once the match started, even though he had a little spot in the match where he did his, the elbow shots to a couple of the guys when Francisco and Harv were checking Francisco's hurt fingers, like it still didn't take away from anything that was the match. It worked perfectly, and it was just good fun. It was a nice way to begin.
Absolutely.
Because then when the show actually started, you got straight into heavy stuff with Connor Mills and Ethan Allen.
Oh, you got piss and vinegar, mate. Piss and vinegar.
Yes, absolute piss and vinegar wrestling. Loved it.
Yeah, it was so good. I mean, Ethan Allen. That was only the second singles match I've ever seen him have live, I think. So I was really looking forward to, like, obviously we've been lucky enough with tag matches to watch him up close, especially in Southampton, that match Young Guns versus Zaya and Oku, which was fucking incredible. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm going to swear a lot tonight because it was just, so good. But it's interesting, right? Because I don't have a photographic memory like Dave does. It's maybe not being a teacher, so I can't remember the card as I'm going down. And this is one based on the overall rating on Cage Match. This is one that's not rated very highly, but I have to say I thought was a really good match. What I would say is I feel like the ending of it came very quickly, and I think you could look at one of two ways. You can look at it the way of it was just kind of done and then the match is over. It's like, well, at least let him like kind of challenge it a bit more. Or you can look and go, he's put it on it strong, right? You can do whatever way you want there.
Like,
but
you're not getting him off. There's no like I like in my world of professional wrestling, if I literally controlled all of it, I love quick tap outs. And I like the threat of a submission to be, you've got to tap out, otherwise you're not wrestling again next week.
Feels very real, doesn't it?
If you let them hold it in any longer, you're going to be injured. That's money off your table. Like, do you remember Taz throwing in the towel for Brian Cage against John Moxley? It was AEW pandemic era when they were at Daly's place. And they did it perfectly because Taz threw in the towel, and then afterwards in like promo with Cage was just like, you weren't getting out of it, mate. Like, and I know you wouldn't tap out. So, we live to fight another day. We're not, you can't afford to get injured. I like that a lot. I was surprised at the cage match rating, but I would just say this, like, I don't put a lot of, I think that all metrics are important. So I am someone that I notice, I'm a numbers guy. Like, I'm a maths teacher. So I notice people's Twitter followings and Instagram followings and stuff like that. And I think they do matter because that they tell you something. All of it's information, and all information is useful. It's not all gospel. Cage match ratings can be quite interesting and they can be quite useful, but not until they've got like over 100 ratings.
Absolutely,
it's still quite early on. So, because I think like if we looked at it right now, the Zack Sabre Jr. Hechicero match would probably be in sort of like the top 50 matches ever on Cage Match, but that will drop down because there'll be loads of people in there who have gone in and given it tens, and then there'll be people who will go in a little bit more measured after time has passed by and a bit of recency bias has gone. I'm sure that Ethan and Connor's match rating will go up nicely. It was nowhere near an average match in any sense. It was a really good match.
Very good, yeah.
It's funny, I watched it back today after I knew that cage match rating. I only looked at cage match because I was curious to know the match lengths. Some matches felt like they were shorter than in fact they were. But I can't believe that the main event was like 35 minutes long because it just flew by. And the Cuthroat Collective match came in over 20 minutes, and it was just they were so at no point did I feel like anything was dragging. They just were perfectly paced.
Cool.
So yeah, I really enjoyed the Ethan and Connor match. I thought it was a really good opener. I think that it was sensible to put it on first, given the fans' familiarity with their story. Also, I mean, Ethan strikes me as somebody who doesn't get nervous. Like, he just seems like a no-fear lad. But surely you can't help but get nervous wrestling in a crowd that size when you haven't wrestled very much for 2.5 years. So letting the lad go on first and get some of that out of the system, I think, was also, I don't know if that was me reading too much into it or not, but it felt like it was a sensible thing to do.
It would make sense.
And then it was followed up with something very different, and something that probably would appeal to a very different part of the audience, with the very, very different Ricky Knight Jr. entrance. What did you make of it?
Right. I have thoughts on this match as a whole thing. Okay, and I'm not sure that I can say it without it being encompassing everything. We kind of said, like, based on the vignettes that were coming up, that we thought he was going to don some face paint, didn't we? Well, we were halfway there, I think. We were halfway there, and I don't think any of us could quite expect what we got.
No.
Right. So from where I couldn't see RKJ until he was in the ring and stood up. So I don't know if he just walked out with him as normal.
So I'll tell you how he came out. There were some, I'm going to say, ghouls. I'm not a horror fan, so maybe somebody can be more specific. But there were a group of ghouls who like crawled out sort of Abaddon style.
Cool. So I did
very,
see
very
that,
dark.
right?
You couldn't see very much of them.
Yeah.
And then the main ghoul crept out, which was RKJ, with the mask on and the body paint. And then the two that turned out to be Zach and Saraya walked behind him. He stood up with them behind him, like as a free. The other ghouls kind of scurried away and they walked to the ring together.
Interesting, because even from right up until the ring, like, I did not see him until he was in there. Now, I could see the ones that I imagine would be Zach and Saraya. I could see them. I couldn't make out that one of them was female until he shot in the ring, when it became very obvious. But at that point,
one thing that I thought was hilarious was as they walked past me, my first thought was, you can cover up your faces, guys, but I know those hand tattoos. So the minute they walked past, I was like, well, that's Zach Knight, because I know those hands. And I looked at Saraya's hands and was like, and they're her tattoos as well. So there we go, who they are. But obviously, that's just me being like an absolute nerd in the mark and loving Zach Knight as someone that I've has been a supporter and an advocate for the work that I do since when he was in RevPro. So, so yeah, obviously then they get in the ring. Ricky takes the face mask off, and Zach and Saraya take their masks off.
So at that point, as they were all coming out, I kept saying to my wife, this feels very Wyatt family, right? So the music starts and it starts slowing down. I sit there and go, oh my God, this is not the night that RevPro need a production issue. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, I'm falling for it, like the older trick in the book, because why would it slow down? Like, everything's digital now, right? It's not like this. I'm showing my age here by the fact of where a tape, when it would stop working, would slow down. And then I was like, and then obviously Marilyn Manson started playing, or I think it was Manson. And it was just like
Manson, If I Was Your Vampire, I think it's called.
Yeah,
it's definitely got the word vampire in it.
And then
Marilyn Manson being someone that I was a massive fan of and loved his music, and now find myself in a position where it's hard to enjoy his music, given everything going on with him in the wider world.
Yeah, and let's just say that was a theme for this a little bit, which I can get with some people as well. So obviously there was that music. When they were coming out, I was saying to myself, this feels very Wyatt family. Like the masks looked spooky, like Wyatt family, right? So that just felt a bit odd. And then
I got very much Demon Finn Balor vibes.
Yeah, and I could get what, because then when he came up and I was like, holy shit, like it just looked like the devil was rising up. And that's where I saw, I think, in the ring at that point. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? What I would say as well is in that moment, it took away any suspension of disbelief for me and who was going to win. Okay, right?
Yeah.
So if to me that, and I get why they did all of this at the beginning, because it gives you the opportunity to do what you've done, but straight away it told me this is who's winning the match, right? While that's where I was going anyway with my thought process, it just removed that avoidance of doubt.
You still want the suspension, don't you?
Yeah, but that's it. It's like if you take away that suspension from me, I don't say I lose interest, because these guys did a great job at keeping me interested with the actual match. But I want the ability, the surprise factor. So
I would say though, I'd say there's one type of match where you don't need any suspension of disbelief, and that's like a squash match. There never needs to be a suspension of disbelief in a squash match. And this match wasn't short, but it was one of the most dominant and one-sided in terms of offense matches I've ever seen RevPro do.
Yeah, I think you're right.
They've done a few matches this year that have been shorter. I think back to Mercedes Blaze versus Ronnie Knox, and Cutthroat Collective versus Artemis, Ronnie Knox, and Evie Madden. Couple of Dynamite Lee Dawson matches when he wrestled Dan Maloney last year and Connor Mills last year. Like, they do sometimes play with those. They do tend to be people where you would expect them to be dominantly defeated based on their arc.
Yeah.
So Zozaya isn't somebody you'd expect to be dominantly beaten, but he was, and I find that really interesting because I'm curious to see, because I don't think it undermines Zozaya at all. I thought he looked amazing, and there were loads of people around me who had never heard of him who were like, "Wow, he's well good."
Yeah, exactly.
But
and
he still managed to get loads of shine, but it was, like you say, very evident who was winning, and Ricky at no point looked like there were no. There was one when Zozaya did the top rope Death Valley driver that beat Oku and beat Leon Slater, but it didn't beat RKJ. Other than that, it was very much a sort of like dominant RKJ win. But it was, what I would say is, the whole entrance side of it wasn't for me. But what I mean by that is, it also wasn't designed to appeal to me, and that's okay. Like, I like wrestling to be as sports orientated as possible, and that's why I love New Japan. And this was definitely far more on the entertainment side of it.
It was
but then that's also really fitting. There were loads of people there who I saw online afterwards saying, like, RKJ was like the star of the show. Like, he was my favourite person. He was the standout. And it's like, well, clearly you like a type of wrestling that this show appealed to. And for RevPro to really do their best this week, they kind of had to appeal to as many people as possible. The Saraya and Zach Knight, like, in RevPro, were two things that I was really happy to see. I know that, especially before the Cardiff show, but especially after the AEW Cardiff show, like, there's a lot of disharmony, I'd say, between Saraya and her fella and the wrestling community. But I enjoyed the moment. I enjoyed seeing everybody that was involved with it. I thought that one worry that I would have, if you had told me in advance, oh, by the way, RKJ is going to come out in face paint, my first worry would be, oh shit, I hope it doesn't look like, kind of shindy, carny, good idea in paper, but we're not experts at this. Like, he looked professional. He looked that. I'd imagine that a lot of time and a lot of money went into making him look that good, in the same way that, like, to the level where people in AEW and WWE that have, like Dustin Rhodes and Finn Balor and people like that, when they've had this makeup done, the time and effort that goes into it, it looked like RKJ had. So I was really pleased with that. And most importantly for me, and the thing that I care most about, and the thing that I noticed most when I watched it back, bell to bell, it was fantastic. When it got "This is awesome" chants, at the time, I felt they were a little bit generous. But I think that's because I was a bit influenced. Some of the people around me weren't very high on the RKJ presentation. And they were kind of, I had lots of little voices in the back of my head. Finn Balor wants his gimmick back. Oh my God, is it 2010 again? Like, stuff like this. And it was just hard to ignore. But when I watched it back today, I was reminded, like, just how good it is. And some of the stuff that I couldn't see, because I was on the entrance ramp. So I'm going down the rings here. Some of the spots were on the other side of the ring, like the elbow drop onto the chair when Zozaya was, like, sprawled onto the chair. I couldn't see that from where I was. So watching it back on demand, you're like, wow, some of this stuff was like the DDT onto the the floor looked brutal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was, at the time, I thought this might be the low point of the show, given that it was a bit controversial with it being quite far removed from what RevPro normally do in presentation. But actually, the fan response was it was like the Wyatt family, like you did the comparison earlier. Some people think that that is like the worst thing to happen in wrestling for ages, and some people think it's like an all-time great thing. It really splits people. No one's kind of on the fence for stuff like that. Like the spooky gimmicks, they're always love it or hate it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pleased with how it went, and I'm curious to see like if it's referenced again.
Yeah, so that's kind of like where my feelings on this are, right? So in terms of the presentation, one of the things that we're talking about that popped back to my head, one of my favorite things, right, that I've seen at a RevPro show and popped to be the biggest, right? So you remember on screen when it said killer, right? And it's like coming down with the blood and it says killer. And then the R disappeared. And then the E disappeared. And it says kill Zozaya. I was like, oh my God, like that just felt, I don't know. It just awoken something in me, right? And I was just like, what? Like that simplicity of that bit of production just made me go, okay, we've gone from a guy that's had a great match and they shook hands after that first match to the second match, which had a botch on it, right? And it's fair to say, like, these accidents happen. The match ended the way it ended. Wrestling's a tough game, and we're going to get accidents happen
one shot
time to time, right? Okay, yeah, exactly. So the way they kind of took that to, like, put into Ricky's, like, demeanor side, just generated even more heat, and I love that. When I say the Wyatt family, I don't even mean Wyatt family of like now, because look, I've made it no secret that WWE is not really my thing for the most part, right? It hasn't been since around WrestleMania 33 time. I dip in and out, and I've dipped in a lot less over the years. I was really curious by the recent Wyatt family stuff, given the passing of Bray, and just let's go and give it a look to see what this vision for him is, right? And to me, apart from one thing they did, it all feels a bit hokey. But this was more in line with original Wyatt family for me, or the way they presented the Fiend on screen, that it was not supposed to feel like silly. It was, or I didn't even think it was supposed to feel spooky. It just, I think it was supposed to just give this creepiness and uneasiness to it. So I was like, and then I kind of thought, but Ricky's like dressed like that. What does this mean going forward? Like, how does this make sense, right? I'm going to say something very brutal now. I'm going to have to separate the art from the artist a lot with the presentation, because you referenced it there about Saraya and her partner, husband. I don't know if they're married or whatnot. Very inclusive community and want people to feel inclusive. So I appreciated the heat she brought, because that's what they wanted to bring to Ricky. So that's what I would say on that element. Zach,
and it was lovely to see Zach.
Yeah, lovely to see Zach. He's always been really nice to me when I've seen him. So and I think it is. It's work, like you say. It's we have to separate the girlfriend from the boyfriend and the art from the artist. We can't just sit here and badmouth everything about it because of that, but we also recognise the fact that for a lot of people, therefore, they might not have wanted to see this. Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, it would have all been planned in advance, and I think that some like the tweet that was sent to that quote tweeted Catherine, friend of the channel and friend of RevPro Catherine, which was like, it's worth addressing, like just completely vulgar and
fucking disgusting,
shocking, I think it's safe to say.
Absolutely.
So yeah, like awkward, but I can't like ignore it. But yeah, sure. With that aside,
so sorry. Where I was going with it was, then we got to the end of the match, And so we've been referenced that he is out there to kill Zozaya, right? That is his thing.
Yeah.
He is the killer. And then he had his opportunity and then just didn't. And I was like, so like,
I didn't get it either.
are we to
I'm really glad
pretend
you
now?
mentioned it actually, because I kind of had it in the chamber to say once you'd finished, because when I did my wrap up a minute ago, I forgot to mention it. But I was like, I didn't get it.
Like,
how can we go from literally 12 or 13 minutes ago, kill Zozaya, to 13 minutes later, shake his hand?
And you could have the other argument I had for this, right, was he didn't because he already did, right? Because as soon as he held Zozaya up for the handshake and let him go, Zozaya flopped, right?
Yeah.
Which,
I suppose, that is one way of looking at it, isn't it? It's like he did kill him. He killed him bell to bell.
Yeah. The thing,
and he's kind of killed Zozaya's momentum a little bit as well.
Yeah. That did generate
I don't
a
know
laugh,
if you saw it. I don't know if you saw it from your seat. I didn't see it from my seat, but I did see it from on demand. It was very much like Zach telling him to kill him.
Yes.
So
it
like
looked
ringside,
like that from me.
Zach was like really, and then he didn't. So I don't think, maybe again, I'm reading too much into it, but maybe one way out of that is the idea that it was Zach and Saraya had put it into RKJ's that he needed to go out and kill this kid, and he didn't. And therefore, if Zach was to come and get involved in RevPro again, there's some like little threads to play with. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe I'm overthinking it. That wouldn't be the first time. For me, it was a little bit jarring. Like the kill Zozaya handshake at the end. They were a little bit too polar. Like maybe if it just hadn't said kill Zozaya, I wouldn't be thinking it.
Same. But it did. And that's what we're judging it on, aren't we?
If instead of handshaking, if he'd just run to him and then just kind of like, almost like, I'm going to do something and I'm going to look really stupid doing it. But if he'd like run to him and sort of like been a bit like, like that, and Zozaya flinches and fell on his ass, and Ricky could laugh as he left.
Yeah.
That would be like, I've killed you in spirit, but I'm letting you live like out of mercy.
Do you know
as
who's
opposed
in
to
charge?
Handshake, which was more of, you brought something out inside of me. Look at this monstrous entrance I've done, but now I'm going to shake your hand. Again, I would always say this. If ever we criticise anything and say, like, maybe they could have done this, we don't know. But we're literally like a pair of marks sitting there buying a ticket to watch it. And we're talking about it with hindsight. And we don't know the larger storylines. We don't know what's coming next.
Yeah.
We're literally just sharing our thoughts.
And that was clearly done, like designed in a way that, like, that ending was planned the way it was planned, right? Like you don't just kind of go kill him, and then he doesn't, and it's like, well, that was just all like done on the fly. Like that was all done with purpose, right? So that's why I say I trust in the process.
Everything done with purpose, right?
Yeah, trust in the process, right? So I am trusting in it, but it's probably the one that I as of now, do not see how these elements link up into a cohesive. But Andy's great at what he does. Okay, so I am willing to give it that.
I must admit, I quite like it when there are things for me to question.
Same.
Because that's kind of one of the fun things in wrestling, right? It's one of the things that we love about companies where there is stuff to talk about, and it not just be either too boring to talk about or too spoon-fed for there to be any worth in talking about. So yeah, very interesting to see what's next. I don't know if Ricky's going to Berlin or not. I don't recall seeing a GWF post announcing him.
I'm 99% sure there was one. I'm pretty sure there was.
I wouldn't be. I'd be surprised if he wasn't. I just don't recall one.
Yeah.
But then it's very rare for him not to be on a 229 card as well. So I'm sure we will see him at some point this weekend, and we'll get some answers then.
Absolutely. Looking forward to seeing where it goes, and that element of like, as we were saying, the entertainment side, which I know you said is not normally your bag. I do still quite like a bit of that. So
Fair enough.
having that element of it there was great because it wasn't oversaturating either.
I will say one thing. I like we're not suddenly pretending that Ricky Knight Jr. died and has come back as a demon. We're not pretending that he is actually a monster.
Yeah.
He is a wrestler who donned some face paint and some body paint and had a cool entrance for a wrestling match. That's no different to Mina Shirakawa dancing her way to the ring or Hechicero wearing a mask. Like, I know that's a cultural thing, but it's not suddenly like it's a complete suspension of belief that this is set within a actual real sporting framework. So,
At worst, what he was doing there is he was doing this to intimidate his opponent, right?
100%. Yeah.
That's
what's
the
the
worst
difference
it was,
between this and the New Zealand rugby team doing the hacker? Like, it's an intimidation tactic, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Dante
Martin for the Cruiserweight Scramble, right?
Yes, I think we spoke when we were speaking last time. We were kind of talking about and the ones that between us we'd settled on. Really, I think were pretty much someone like Lio Rush, Top Flight, that sort of area, wasn't it? So
we definitely talked about Dante as a possibility, but I think when we both put our bets down, we both said Lio Rush, so we really weren't far away at all.
Absolutely.
I actually liked that it was Dante rather than Lio from a personal sense, because that's another amazing wrestler that I've got to see in a RevPro ring.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen Lio before. And the moment that him and Leon Slater looked at each other, I was just like, yes, please.
Yeah.
Global Wars, please. Like, book this for Global Wars, please, or next year's anniversary, or Leon in an AEW ring or Dante in a TNA ring. Don't care where it is. Just want to watch that match. Obviously, I want it to be in a RevPro ring, but I'd accept it anywhere. And I really enjoyed the. We'll get to the result, but I really enjoyed the scramble itself. I thought everybody came out of it looking good. Like, these matches, always it's a little bit like, if we looked at it like analytically, it is a little bit of everybody getting some of their stuff in. So everybody has cool moments. Everybody gets a finisher in. Everybody gets a near fall, and then one of them wins.
Yeah.
But I feel like, given that I've just described quite a few tropes, they did all of that really well here.
That's it. So first of all, I think we could see Dante Martin again, purely because I think he's going to tell Tony Khan that there's this guy called Dave the Mark who takes great pictures of him, and he wants to come back and get some more. But
I got some love this weekend. It was nice.
It was very lovely to see, mate. So publicly as well. That was great. And they were great pictures. I've said to you privately, but making me really have a look into what my next phone is going to be, because the pictures I get from this iPhone are not good.
Honestly, I always feel bad for whenever anyone praises my photos and they're like, "Oh, you take such good photos." I'm like, I really don't.
Right, I'm going to stop you here. I'm going to say something publicly that I said today privately. The photos are wonderful. Yes, the camera does a lot of the heavy lifting, but a camera cannot compose a picture the way that Dave composes the pictures. So stop being humble, all right? You're not Zozaya. Stop being humble.
I will publicly say, if you want to have the newest Google Pixel phone, mine's whatever their, I don't know, I can't tell you what version of it is, but there are better and more recent versions of the one I've got. But basically, it's a really good camera that is also a phone, as opposed to the iPhone, which is a really good phone that has a camera. I kind of liken it in real simple terms.
Yeah, when I upgraded my phone, so I was on Huawei last time because they had the best camera on the market, and then they got all the stuff about Chinese spies and everything came out, and they're not really around much anymore for buying phones in the UK.
Never heard of them.
But they had so basically it came out that it looked like they were using their phone networks to spy on like foreign. If I'm remembering it correctly, just in case there's any Chinese spies watching now, but it was something around.
My takeaway here is going to be that George had a Chinese phone that was spying.
Yeah, security concerns. Now, all I cared is it took great pictures. But at the same, it took amazing pictures, and I was told when the new iPhone came out, this is going to be better than that. It's not. It's fucking bollocks. But yeah, so those pictures, wonderful. But I do agree that we could see Dante Martin back. I think there is money on the table for him versus Leon.
The vibe I got was that he really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I should have done because I spotted him on the walk up to Wembley Way from Wembley Way just before the stadium Sunday morning, and I really felt bad stopping him and asking for a picture, so I didn't. But I could have asked him how he thought how RevPro went for him or stuff like that. But you're right. There's a lot of tropes that happen in this match, but I look at these kind of matches in kind of isolation of what they are, right? And to me, I treat a scramble like this as lucha rules, right? In that just everything goes right. So you're going to get all of the tropes, but if you go in your mind, it's lucha rules in the sense of they are going to stop and wait for them, and they are going to catch them. And everyone's going to get their shit in, and like everyone's going to hit their finisher. Cool, okay, I don't mind that. But if you're going to do it well, and they did. Every single man in this match played their parts really, really well, and not only that, but we came out with a finish that resulted in a story going forward. Like,
I know that me, you, and Spike last week, we didn't even mention Will Kaven winning.
No, not at all.
Lots of people, it's lovely. Lots of people will in my comments or in like WhatsApp or DMs and stuff will ask me who I think's winning, or they'll send me their like, this is who I think's going to win them all, and I'll come back saying I agree with 8 of yours, but there's a couple I disagree with, and saying it's nice. I like it. I like predictions. I didn't see. I must have seen maybe a dozen people tell me their predictions. No one had Kaven down to win this. Yeah. And I will say this. Again, there's a couple of moments on this show where the people around me must have thought I was a bit unhinged. But when Kaven won, I just laughed really, really loudly for quite a long time. It was perfect. He's the spoiler, and he spoiled it. Like, he is the disruptor, right? And he disrupted everything. But also now we've gone from like Neon, the really impressive luchador cruiserweight who we get to see every now and then as our champion, to Will Kaven, who we get to see every week, that nobody wants to see because he's such a good heel. Like, it's a whole new dynamic. We haven't had this since I've been a RevPro fan in the Cruiserweight champion. Because Mills was like a chicken shit heel champion. But you also knew that there were lots of people that were fond of Mills. And they kind of booed him, but they secretly like were desperate to cheer him. I don't think many people are desperate to cheer Kaven. I am, but I don't think many people are. And actually, like, that's good. That's the reaction he wants. He wants proper heat, and he's going to get it as champion.
Absolutely.
I also feel like, thinking about it, I don't think it's time for Cameron to be the champion. Not because I don't think he's good enough, but because I feel like there's a longer story there, especially with everything with Leighton Buzzard happening. It dawned on me watching this match, Leon doesn't need to be the champion. Like, it would be lovely for him to be the champion, and I'd love to see Leon as champion. But you put Leon Slater on a match, and it doesn't need to have above it Undisputed Cruiserweight Championship for you to know it's going to be an important and a good match. So I don't think the title elevates Leon. I think Leon elevates the title. I do think the title elevates Will Kaven. But what I also know is Will is a really, really accomplished wrestler. And elevating him on the card will also give him a bigger spotlight for just how good he is. So I'm really excited for this. I want to see Kaven versus Cameron Khai. I want to see Kaven versus Leon. I want to see Kaven doing every dirty trick in the book to keep winning. I quite want to see him as champion for quite a long time.
Interesting.
It makes the J Cup interesting as well.
Yeah, that's where my mind went. So we asked for some questions this week, and actually, I've just clicked onto them because I know one of them was Will Caven related. So asked by Ant at Ant Swift Music, thoughts on Will Caven winning the cruiserweight strap. So I was like you, it was completely left field to me. Like and we'll get on to one of the matches later on where this happens, but we've spoken a lot about like using a big name to transition a belt, and you get to have that person. And now I know this person was ELP was, I believe he's a former cruiserweight champion, isn't he? In RevPro, or am I making it up?
Yeah, and
yeah, cool.
Winner.
Yeah, so so you've got someone like ELP who, yes, he's previously been in the lineage, but he's never been as big a name as he is now. Like the guy is one of his names.
He's booked for the next 3 RevPro shows, where he could have won it on the night and lost it on Sunday,
which was where my mind was going. Yeah. I was like, I was trying to work this out. So I tell you where my mind was going with this was he was gonna lose it to Ethan Allen at the 229. That's where my mind was going straight away. And then Kaven wins. Just before I kind of go a bit further, Dave, someone asked about biggest shock of the night. Was this result your biggest shock of the night, or if it's not, we'll keep it for something else? But
so two biggest shocks of the night.
Yeah,
and I can't decide which one was the biggest shock because they were different types of shock. So I'll talk about the other one later. But this one was a shock in the sense that I didn't see it coming. I spend a lot of time thinking about RevPro, from podcasting to writing articles to just watching shows from the past to I always watch every show I go to live. I watch it again on demand. So I never contemplated him winning. So that made it a real shock. But the moment it did happen, I was kind of like, of course, like this is genius.
It makes sense.
It was like that moment where, like in a film, where you're like, oh my God, I see what they're doing now and it's brilliant. Like, how did I miss this? It was hiding in plain sight. So it was that kind of shock.
And to answer your question, thoughts on Will Caven winning the cruiserweight strap? And also, it was Adam at Hokan Dory who asked about biggest shock of the night. So I would agree this was one of the 2 biggest shocks of the night for me. But maybe not quite the biggest. But I loved how it set up him versus Cameron at the end. I'm not sure, and I think now to kind of know, my immediate thought was, does Cameron beat him for the title at Uprising? That like if we're getting Uprising,
I haven't really thought about who I think could win the J Cup.
That's it.
Because one thing that's really interesting, I don't know if everyone's like put 2 and 2 together, but the 229 is the last show before the J Cup. So we've got we've got the 2 shows in Berlin this week. I can't imagine that's going to set anything up for the J Cup because they kind of feel like they exist within their own little realm. It's their GWF with RevPro shows in the same way that the Barcelona show was with RevPro. Maybe some of those guys, we always get some imports for the J Cup, so maybe some of those guys will be in it. But my gut feeling is we'll get something in the 229 for the J Cup, so Francesca can advertise it and remind people, especially given it's in Stevenage. That's only like 45 minutes an hour from London.
Yeah.
Then we'll just get announcements. Like they don't, because it's a tournament, you don't need storyline.
No.
For reasons why people can be involved in it. I was looking at the last year's and the year before, and you've got like a real sort of like who's who of people from like Harrison Bennett and Senza Volto and Mascara Dorada, Wild Boar. The year before we had Leo Rush in it with Luke Jacobs was in it as the champion. So I wonder if Kaven will be in it as the champion this year.
Possibly, yeah.
I think it'll be. We know Barbaro Cavanerio is in it. It'll be interesting to see who else is. I'm assuming we're going to get a babyface winner, and it will either be the big crowning moment for Cameron. I personally still think it's a year too soon for him in terms of the storyline. and that maybe this is a chance to put it on an import, put the J Cup on an import. So if you look at who has won the J Cup before, they're always like big names. So Speedball Mike Bailey, Jushin Thunder Liger, ELP, Michael Oku, Robbie X, and Leon Slater. There might have been one I've missed there, but everybody there has wrestled either at that point or since in New Japan, in CMLL, in, some of them have wrestled AEW, some of them have wrestled TNA. Like they're kind of like, they're big names for people that know their independent wrestling and the wider wrestling realm. Cameron Khai is still very much early on in his career in terms of that, but it might make the most sense storyline wise, or it could be a chance to bring somebody over like a Mystico and have them come over and win it, and then get a big York Hall match for Uprising, or I still feel like there's quite a lot of weeks in the autumn and winter where there could be a RevPro show that's not on the calendar yet. Obviously, Global Wars has been added. Royal Quest as a New Japan show has now been added, but we know that that's heavily RevPro featured as well. We know there's a show in Manchester being very much like alluded to on the Q&As for a long time. I'll be shocked if there's not a Manchester show at some point this year, based on the answers Andy's given.
We've got the Coventry weekend as well.
Say again, sorry?
I was just saying, we've got the Coventry weekend of the Trios tournament.
Yeah, so I feel like there's lots of... It feels like they're kind of writing the schedule as they go. I don't mean that as a negative, because the company is growing. It's not just a copy and paste last year's schedule, because this year's schedule is bigger than last year's. It's recovering from a pandemic and growing at the same time. So
it's wonderful.
Yeah, really, really interested to see what's next with that.
Absolutely. Right then, so what was next on that card? Let me just
Ishii and JJ Gale, right?
Yes, yeah.
I was surprised when this match went on the card, and
same.
It made me immediately a little bit nervous for what was going to follow it. And the match that followed it eased my fears immediately.
Yeah,
absolutely. This match was banging, and the next match was carnage in all the best possible ways. So really, really happy with how they turned out.
This was on, for me going into it, was the hardest call of any match on the card. Right?
So, as in who you thought would win?
Apart from the Scramble, I mean, even in the Scramble match, I kind of went with someone that made sense to me. But this one was so hard because I've got two lanes that kind of my brain was going with here, right? JJ Gale makes sense to win because he's done something that Luke Jacobs hasn't been able to do, right? If he beats Ishii.
Cool storyline there.
Luke Jacobs wins the title. Lots of history. JJ is not on Luke's level, but what if he surpasses Luke's level by doing something he couldn't, right? So there you go. Ready-made challenger again.
One of our questions this week was who should be Luke's next challenger, right? And if JJ had won this, we'd probably both be saying JJ, right?
Absolutely.
So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and then Ishii makes sense. And I think I went with this in the video that we did for Michael Oku, which go back and watch, guys, because you'll see Dave predicted two people to turn up at this show. And I've predicted what looks likely to be the match, I would say, for Global Wars, albeit with a different RevPro champion. But I was looking at this.
We know what we're talking about.
We know what we're talking about, don't we? Yeah, we are Andy Quilden. So yeah, I was like,
he's our puppet.
If dance for me, Quilden.
Anyone watching it on Spotify is going to miss your little dancing fingers. Then,
I forget that. You're
going to haunt my dreams for weeks.
We're being listened to on Spotify as well, but so we had this match where it makes sense for Ishii to win because then it sets up that redemption story for Luke, doesn't it? So I think my mind, my head and my heart, I think, wanted Ishii to win this. I think this is one where it's the moment for JJ to show that there is victory in defeat. And this was very much a victory in defeat, because this made...
I don't think JJ has ever looked better than this.
No, absolutely. There's a lot of people who... No.
The Zack Sabre Jr. match was good. And that's not fair. It was really good. Let's just stress that. It was really good.
Yeah.
His match with Luke Jacobs at High Stakes, we both had on our top 10 matches of the first half of this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think this was even better.
Yeah. This will be very much a go back and watch again, because I think when I was there in the moment, just it was just a spectacle unfolding in front of me, and you could just see them getting more comfortable with each other. And what I loved about where I was sat in that arena was being able to just look at JJ's face. And one of the things that I've been critical of JJ about maybe sort of a year ago would be his over reliance on like hand signals and like faces everywhere. And again, it's this growth that you're seeing from this maturity come through, that he's much more assured of who he is as a performer, and he could he wasn't using facial reactions to get a reaction in the way of like telling people to give a reaction. He was using them to generate these like just natural organic reactions, and it was
the reaction was already there, wasn't it?
It wasn't like he was going, right guys, I'm looking for this. It's so happened and people reacting to it, and again, this shows why he was given this match, because this is a massive position of trust, right? You've got a relationship with New Japan here on the line, that if you put someone's shit in there and the match bombs, like that is a New Japan talent, especially like New Japan could be like, what's going on here? Like there's a lot of trust instilled in that position. He more than delivered in that. And
absolutely, like we have to stress that, like anyone who is booked to face like a big name from another big company, one, they have to be trusted to be able to work safely with them and for the other person to not get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Two, they have to make the other person look good because they're representing the company. And three, they have to be like worth that person's like time and the company's time. And like it is a position of trust. 100% it's a position of trust. JJ smashed it. This was probably the match of all the matches that when I watched back, I realised that it was like, sometimes there's like a recency bias where you think something is amazing, you watch it back and you're like, oh, okay, maybe it wasn't quite as good. Maybe I just got a little bit carried away in the moment. But then there's also another side of it where you can watch a match and think like, yeah, that was really good. I really enjoyed that. And then you watch it back and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't even notice that little bit. Or I didn't notice this little detail, or that little, just the fine details in wrestling that can make the difference. This was a match, when I watched it back today, I realised that it was sort of like, it had an extra quarter or half a star in it that I hadn't realised from ringside. I'm very, very interested to see, because Meltzer was there. Last year he rated every match.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to know, is he going to rate every match? Because I think, if I'm correct, it was the first RevPro show ever where everything was rated. Previously, he's just picked and choose like a few matches to rate. And last year's Copper Box was the first year where he rated every match. And I'm curious to see if he's going to do the same again this year. And I'm curious to see what he gives Ishii. It is I think he'll be giving it 4 and something, which is like really massive, because last year, like no disrespect to him, but JJ Gale's match last year was the lowest rated match on the card.
Yeah.
So
it was Fujita's last year, wasn't it?
It's going to be one of the highest. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's also relevant of the fact that where he was positioned on the card and who his opponent on the card was and how much time they were given and all of those things. But I think it just goes to show the growth in JJ Gale, that he's gone from being third on the card in a non-featured match. He's only gone up one match on the card. He's only fourth, but that doesn't mean anything. The fact that it's fourth is the fact that it was the Ishii match.
It's the stature of the match, isn't it?
Especially after last year, because there would have been people being like, "Oh, Ishii match. This was the match we all loved last year, so we will love this match." And JJ's got to live up to that. And I feel like he really, really did. And he did it his way. He didn't go out and try and wrestle like Luke Jacobs to have a Luke Jacobs and Ishii match. He wrestled JJ Gale, and he had a JJ Gale versus Ishii match, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Absolutely. I was just quickly, if you saw my eyes away there for a second, I saw that I had a DM in, and I thought it was someone coming to me with a question, because obviously we asked for questions. Friend of the show, Reagan Elite, who has a lovely barbecue dinner with on Wednesday. Very nice.
We did.
He's just sent me a graphic for the 229 that dropped 7 minutes ago. ELP versus Zozaya.
Oh my!
Oh my, indeed!
Oh
yeah.
mate, that's like when I knew ELP was on the show, because he'd put it on his socials that he was going to be working 229.
Yeah.
So you then start thinking, like, what match would you like to see most? Like, that, I don't think you could ask for more than that, could you?
No, you really couldn't.
ELP
so
versus Zozaya, like that is the match that I want.
Yeah, that is wonderful. But you know what? Back to the match at hand. Yeah, and I think like, what you just said there, mate, and kind of you just said what I was thinking as we were talking about it, right? He was put in a match. Fujita was not something I'm very well versed on, but certainly last year going into it, there was, from people that I trust, there was a bit of buzz around going, he could be someone that is going to be a good up and comer.
Yeah, and also, like, it's worth pointing out that Fujita in 2024 is not Fujita from 2023.
Yeah. So
it was very much New Japan Young Lion Fujita, whereas now he's like TMDK member. He's Zack Sabre Jr.'s mate. He's part of the group. Whereas last year he was literally Zack's young boy.
Yeah, and
he was Ichiban's sweet boy. He to Zack Sabre Jr. He was what Shota Umino was to John Moxley when Moxley was in the G1.
Got you. And yeah, that was what I had, like potential. And then to a degree, that's what a lot of people kind of felt about JJ last year as well. A lot of potential. Yeah. And I think that JJ is now, he's far less potential and more fulfilled in that way. Like, there's not this going, oh, what's he got in it? No, we know we're seeing it more and more and more. Thought it was a wonderful match. He held up his end of the bargain so much on there, made Ishii look brilliant. I was one of those people that Jacobs Ishii was my favourite match last year. I thought I bought a ticket for Uprising on the strength of Ishii Jacobs 2 alone. Like, literally, I was not going to that show. That got announced. I booked my ticket, right? So that was how big a deal that first match was to me. So going into this, for me, JJ had big shoes to fill. Not that I'm not treating him as the same performer, but big match, atmosphere.
So it is a natural comparison, though, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And you could say it's unfortunate for him that it's a natural comparison, or you could say it's an opportunity. But it is, and it's a comparison that we're not the only ones that would have been making. So
yeah, but you know what? The opportunity was there. He grabbed it with both hands, and this is one that I'm going to be very keen to watch back.
Yeah, yep.
Absolutely.
And I tell you what, the next match was so much fun to watch back, because it's the style of match it is. Depending on where you're positioned in the crowd, you can't see everything that everyone's doing. You've only got one set of eyes, and there are other people around. So watching it back, there's loads of little bits where I was like, oh, I didn't realise that happened whilst this was happening. Just Cutthroat Collective versus Team RevPro, if you like, Rhio, Kanji, Nightshade, Debbie Keitel, and then a little pat on the back for me, because she was my number one pick in my 10 women that could be in this match, Gisele Shaw, which I'm so happy about, because I wanted it to be someone where it made sense.
Yeah.
If it had been, because loads of people were saying Thunder Rosa after she'd appeared at Riot Cabaret, and it's like, yeah, that would be really cool. But actually, if we were going to put it under a microscope, it doesn't make any sense. Thunder Rosa has never been to a RevPro show in a working capacity. So why would she turn up to fight the corner? It would only make sense if it was someone who had an issue with somebody in the Cutthroat Collective, or someone who had a love for RevPro. And Gisele Shaw is a 2-time undisputed British Women's Champion. She is, for me, she's synonymous with the women's division in RevPro. Her and Alex Windsor are the two people that, if you say women's match in RevPro, they're the two people I think about. Alex Windsor, because she's been the face of it, and now Dani Luna as well. They've been the faces of it since I've been going. And Gisele Shaw, because she was the face of it, of everything I've watched on demand from before I arrived. And it always really bothered me that I'd missed her. So I was delighted to see her. I got to see her last year for Impact when they worked commentary for their TNA taping when Leon signed his contract. But it's not the same because I wasn't invested in her match. It was nice to get to see her work. Whereas this time I was thoroughly invested. What a match. I'm sure we can pick out some of our favorite bits from it. But for me, the most important thing is the Cuthroat Collective won. They looked strong and dominant, and they looked like they're here to stay. And that, for me, makes me so happy because my biggest fear, I've said it before, was that this was just going to build to this match and that'd be it.
Okay, so I'm going to say, first of all, Gisele Shaw, great. Like you said, I just wanted it to make sense. Like, to me, there was only two options that made sense to me, right? And Gisele was one of them. And the only other one we said, if she was up to it, was Zoe Lucas, right? Now, if you were playing a game of Where's Wally at the Copper Box, this would have been the worst game of Where's Wally at all because everywhere I turned, I saw Zoe Lucas, whether I was upstairs by the merch, whether I was downstairs in my seat, whether I was away getting to the bar or the toilet. She was just there. She was everywhere. I actually posted on Twitter and tagged her in it, and I said, I wonder how many steps Zoe Lucas managed to get at the on Saturday. Oh, and I think she said something like 10,500 in the Copper Box alone. She was putting a shift
something
in.
that really made me smile. I decided not to. I didn't want to wear an Oku shirt, and I didn't want to wear a Luke Jacobs shirt. So I thought it was really fitting to wear my James Castle shirt to the Copper Box.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of rep him and rep his legacy a little bit, especially because I couldn't go to Summer Sizzler. And the whole day, I got 2 compliments on my shirt. No one else mentioned it, but my 2 compliments, one was from Zoe Lucas, who I walked past wearing it, and she smiled at me and she said, nice shirt. And one was from Will Ospreay, who fist pumped me as I walked past him when we were going to get lunch in the food hall, who thanked me for wearing the shirt and was like, thank you for representing him and supporting the cause. And it was just proper little mark out moments. It's not like I wore the t-shirt thinking, this might get me some, this is like the cool thing to do to support genuinely massive fan of the guy's work and devastated at his loss. And you can never foresee who you might bump into, but
that's
moments. Like, it was also my indication that Zoe didn't look like she was going to be working the show in the wrestling ring when she looked like she was working the production side of it so heavily.
That was it, because the way I saw her at one point, and she was kind of dressed up in the way she normally is, and I was like, okay, she looks far too glammed up, if you will, to just go and change into another outfit, right? I would imagine if someone was going to go and work, they're probably in something a bit more comfier. And then as we kind of spotted her, as she turned away, I noticed the battery pack. And I was like, right, she ain't working. She got a battery pack. She got an earpiece in. That would be the ultimate kind of almost trying to throw you off, if that was the case.
Proper red herring.
And that's it. Look, I'm not massively familiar with Zoe's work, so I'm not gonna say I really wanted to be her from an in-ring perspective, right? If she was up to it and she wanted to do it, I'd have loved it just for that moment for her, because she is someone who is synonymous with RevPro as it is anyway. I mean, trained at the Portsmouth School of Wrestling and has gone on to achieve what she's gone on to achieve. But you know what, Gisele Shaw, that was probably a much more realistic pick there. Gisele, I've literally only before Saturday ever saw wrestle once at the 1865 versus Alex Windsor. Knew both of their
I
names.
bet that was good.
It was very good. I left and I was buzzing about Alex. I mean, they were both great.
Was it for the title?
No. So what this was, the title match came on the next show. So Alex Windsor won a non-title match, which then generated the next match where I believe it was where she won the title.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Because I remember that thinking, oh my god, like she's just beat the champion. Like again, knew nothing of. All I'd ever heard of Alex was
because that was
great,
quite a shocking result as well, wasn't it, at the time?
It was, and I was shocked because I wasn't watched every week, so I was just like, oh, someone's beat the champion, like just didn't expect it. And Alex was like in pure babyface mode as well. Like it was really weird, like knowing what she can do now and what she is now, and but it was like playing this really like plucky babyface. And that was like a day where like I really gravitated towards Alex, probably more so because I know that with foreign talents they're usually going to go, so I probably attach myself more to the ones here. But Gisele, she was great. Like she played her part in that match just as much as Alex did, and make it a match that I came away going, wow, okay, this was fantastic, and made me want to come back to Southampton.
I loved their moment in the ring on Saturday when they it's one of my it's a spot I hate, where two wrestlers stumble backwards into each other. But actually, I feel like they did it really, really well, because they didn't stumble back into each other. They kind of emerged in each other's peripheral vision, and then they kind of turned into each other.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was by design or if they were meant to stumble back into each other and they kind of missed each other. But it worked really, really well, and I actually liked it more for that. I mean, where do we begin? Like, there are so many cool things in this. Like the Lizzy Evo throwing the trash can into Nightshade, and then Nightshade emerging covered in blood was just unreal.
Yeah.
The Rhio getting tied up on the ropes and just getting beaten the shit out by Lizzy and Safire with the kendo
in front of me.
Like, they were like proper gnarly. There was the Spanish fly, where Gisele Spanish flied Safire Reed off the top rope onto everybody, was just nuts. Debbie Keitel like dived through everybody and then just like emerged roaring at the crowd. Like, it just looked so cool. There's probably so many more that I can't think of, but what I like with these matches is you have to build up to a conclusive finish. Like, there's all these spots that could, they could have pinned Rhio after beating her up with the kendo stick. That could have been the finish. So you need something to be worthy of ending a match like this. You don't want it to be anticlimactic. And so Alex Windsor putting Rhio through the table with drawing pins all over it was exactly that. I even loved when Harv was counting down 1, 2, 3. It was a little bit like he was a bit tentative, because it was like, I'm going to have to put my hand amongst all these drawing pins. And from a really small but like massive well done to all the Contenders crew. Because do you remember at Uprising when Spike Trevay wrestled Robbie X and they used drawing pins? Do you remember the cleanup afterwards? I don't
think I do.
I think it was one of those moments where it seems like a really good idea at the time. You do it and you've underestimated, shit, this is going to take a long time to get rid of all these drawing pins. And I remember Francesca just doing some ad-libbing.
Yeah.
And when the next match was Connor Mills and Leon Slater, and when they came out, like Sarah Hatch, bless her, was literally standing there, like mouthing to them, being like, stay up there and get just don't come down to the ring yet. We're not ready. And so like Leon had this really slow entrance of like geeing up the crowd, trying to get all the crowd's attention, whilst everyone's like full like hands to the pump, trying to clear the ring of all the drawing pins.
Yeah.
So when the drawing pins came out, I was like, oh God, have they not learned from last time? But no, they really, really had, because it got cleaned away so quickly. And there were so many Contenders like that came rushing through to help. So like, it's nice to see those moments because you don't want any little production moment to undermine what was an amazing match.
Absolutely.
And there are people that are cynical that like to shit on things, right? That is life. So you don't want to give the trolls any food to feed on. So it was. This was one of those moments where I was like, I hope this goes well. You don't want it to be a production thing that affects a wrestling show, but sadly sometimes it is. But not this.
That's it. With for a certain group of people, if something like if they want something to be bad and like the smallest little issue happen, it sticks, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, the ring crew job, great. I mean, I'd had an interaction with Lucia separately and said impeccable job there with the sweeping, just getting there and getting it clean. Her and Lee, they were the unsung heroes of that show. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on, but with all of those drawing pins, and we've never sounded so British on this podcast, have we? Drawing pins for our international listeners, that would be thumbtacks that you would refer to it as. But I quite like the drawing pins as come out on this podcast.
I noticed this. It's also what Andy called them on commentary, which I quite liked because, like, I notice I do it all the time whenever I do posts about RevPro or I do anything on the Instagram channel. I always write the date in American.
Okay, yeah.
And RevPro anniversary, August 24th, not the 24th of August. Because it's, and I don't know why I do it, it sounds better, it reads better, and it's what wrestling, like how dates are said in wrestling. Yeah. And it's a bit of an Americanism that I've let get into my Britishness.
Yeah.
But yeah, I quite like the fact that they're drawing pins.
Yeah, I've been loving hearing you say it because I was like, oh, this shows how British we are. You know what, right? So you've mentioned a lot of the great spots there. So I'd be remiss, like, there's nothing more I can add on to that because you're right with everything you said there. And I haven't had the chance to watch back to see, I could only see kind of all what was going on in front of me. But the things that kind of add to that I noticed is the reactions, the stuff where someone was giving Lizzy shit from halfway over the venue and she found them. She stared into their soul and she gave back to them.
She's a scary woman.
Yeah.
She is a scary woman. I love her to bits, but she scares me.
Absolutely. The woman who becomes 10 feet tall in the ring. I want her to be the next undisputed British Women's Champion. Like, I'm putting it out there now. I want her to be the next champion. Nice. She becomes 10 feet tall when she starts giving it. Like I said, she's shorter than I am when she's wearing her boots. But when she is there, she is 10 feet tall, and I love that.
And
about
also,
her.
like, I mean, you know, I'm 6'1" and 17 stone. Like, I'm a big lad. She'd kick my ass. Like, 100% she'd kick my ass.
Yeah, so, absolutely, she would.
You know that for real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And Safire, the look of horror she was able to, like, she has. I've said this in RevPro. The two people that I feel on, especially on the women's side, that are so good at communicating with their faces and nothing else. Safire Reed, Lucia Lee. Okay, they can both make you, like, they can just do things with their faces, and Safire was doing it all match. Everyone was like Nightshade with all the blood coming down her. Kanji just being like the representative of, like, she is. I don't want to say the mascot, the heart, but she's that. I don't know, that captain. Leader. Yeah, captain. That's the word I'm looking for.
She was the captain of the team. I really felt like that.
That's probably the better word. Yeah, absolutely. And like one of the things that I've really noticed with Kanji that you said to me about a month or two ago now, right? And I've said I don't know what it is, and I was like, there's something with Kanji, and you said it's because she doesn't allow there to be silence that takes away from a match, because sometimes, like, there needs to be something to fill it, and she's
one of the noisiest wrestlers I've watched.
She really is. Like, I've noticed it.
Which sounds like a really weird compliment, but I really mean it as a compliment. Noise is always a good thing. Like, it creates it. Silence is quite intimidating, especially for a crowd of people, especially in the smaller crowds of people.
Mm-hmm.
It always sounded loud throughout the Copperbox show, but she's a proper leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other bits I want to add as well, much like you've said, for me, the Cuthroat Collective are my favourite thing in British independent wrestling.
Yes.
It's just my favourite thing. I loved that there was another new logo up on screen for them. So they've obviously got a logo that they had on their t-shirts, a design, but this looked like a proper logo, which was
black
great.
And red was really well done.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Summer Sizzler was the first time they all wore black and red, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I wasn't 100% convinced on it's because Nina was wrestling in black and red, and they were all wearing their own clothes with a black and red theme, and it felt a little bit. I don't know. I didn't take to it immediately, but when they came out at the Copperbox in the black and red, they looked mint, like absolutely, like they could literally like. I do want this to happen because I want these guys to be massively successful and earn loads and loads of money and smash it and everyone in the world to enjoy them. But I also don't want them to leave us.
Mm-hmm.
But you could take the Cutthroat Collective as they are right now and just plop them into AEW, plop them into WWE, TNA, and just there you go, ready made.
Yeah,
they could do an invasion angle on one of those shows next week, and they're all ready for it.
Yeah, I
would pop really, really hard for it as long as they still turn up at the 229 and Sheffield and Southampton to see us occasionally.
Yeah, exactly. I think every single one of those women, and look, I think everyone, but I think you could put Lizzy Evo, especially in WWE, right? Not that I think she can in AEW, but where she's got such a big personality as well. You could put her in like WWE. You could stick her in that opposite against a Rhea Ripley right now, and she wouldn't look out of place. Like these women.
Watched. So I watched. I don't know how many women's matches. How many women's matches have I watched in the last week? I watched 2 at RevPro, 2 at All In, and Dynamite and Collision must have had a few.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this match and Toni Storm versus Mariah May.
Yeah.
Best 2 women's matches I've watched this week by a distance.
Yeah. And
I don't just mean that in terms of but I also mean that in terms of the quality of the work.
Yeah.
Like actually, if you're going to look at the not just how much I enjoyed it, because that's subjective, but if you look at the objective part of the quality of working, there were matches this weekend that were on a much bigger stage that weren't as good.
Yeah. Where
the wrestlers didn't work as well together and didn't put on and also got less reaction. They're absolutely ready. It's always the case, isn't it? Of someone just has to take a punt.
That's it.
No, I don't think anybody. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think anybody was going to RevPro shows saying of everybody here, Callum Newman is the one that is ready. Of all the people here, Michael Oku, Luke Jacobs, Connor Mills, Leon Slater, Robbie X, RKJ, all these people, of all the men that are here, the one that's ready to go is Callum Newman. I don't think anyone was saying that.
Yep.
Yet Callum Newman was just in the G1. And he did really, really fucking well. Right? Yeah. He was mint in it. Like, he was so good. He's fulfilling a role. He's fulfilling a role as the young understudy in the United Empire. But it doesn't matter. Everyone's fulfilling a role. Like, Mariah May 6 months ago was the young understudy of Toni Storm. Now she's the AEW Women's Champion.
Incredible.
And just put on a match of the year contender for that company.
Yep.
So, if we were looking at, and I don't really, it's something that I thought was really interesting when I did the preview with Andy. He was very much like talking about he thinks about like the quality of performers, and he doesn't think about gender. He just thinks about like the quality of performers. And I've said quite a lot of times here of like the best women in the world, the best women's matches, but that's because of these companies all have a women's division. But if you were going to list the best wrestlers in RevPro, like that are currently working lots of RevPro shows, a lot of the best wrestlers are currently women.
Absolutely.
And that's testament to just how much ability and potential for an even bigger career these guys have.
Absolutely. I was having this conversation on Twitter with someone a couple of days ago. I can't remember the lady's name, but one of the things that I found myself stopping to doing more now is saying you're one of my favorite women's wrestlers.
Yeah.
Because the quality of... Look, I'm not going to beat around the bush. For if you were a fan of Western style wrestling for a period of time, you were, for the majority of it, grading women's wrestling on a curve, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I will hear... You'll still hear, and I don't mean any disrespect, but you'll hear a lot of people talk about that Trish Stratus versus Lita main event from Raw as one of the best wrestling matches, right? And it was one of the best North American women's wrestling matches at that time period, right? We've come a long way, and I think this is where you're really actually what we say there about the objective versus feel and enjoyment aspect. And we are so lucky that women like that who had that opportunity, who could pave the way at that point, has meant that now women's wrestling has become so accessible that we're probably at the point now where saying, you're my favorite women's wrestler. Oh, I like women's wrestling. It's like, no, you should just now be saying, I like wrestling. She's a great wrestler. Yeah. Like there is the distinction of being a woman doesn't come into it anymore for me, other than you have the women's title for the women's division. And I could see a scenario.
I find myself like you, still like occasionally doing it, but it's more for me in the sense that I view RevPro in quarters.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got because of the 4 divisions, you've got the tag team division, the cruiserweight division, the women's division, the men's division. But they're all wrestlers, and my favourites are spread out amongst all 4 of them, and and the best wrestlers are spread out amongst all 4 of them. Some of the very best wrestlers are part of a tag team, and you very rarely get to see in singles action, but on their own are some of the most talented people around.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, the Cuthroat Collective is here to stay. So fucking glad on that.
And can we just say the final word on it?
Yeah.
Last year there was 1 women's match, and it was spoiled by the fans. I use the word fans loosely because I don't believe that the people doing the hardcore country chant were fans of Revolution Pro Wrestling or fans of British professional wrestling. I'm not entirely sure if they were fans of wrestling at all, or if they were just fans of themselves. And
I'm not going to say what I think they are.
Honestly,
let's just put it that way.
It pissed me off beyond belief.
Mm-hmm.
But this year, none of that. And I don't know what it was like where you were in the crowd, but it was buzzing around me. And I definitely had, I know that there were people around me who were very, very kind of casual RevPro fans or casual British fans. I had people that were attending their first ever British show, and I had people attending their first ever RevPro show, because you know what I'm like, mate, I fucking talk to anybody. And I was there chatting to everybody, at times, getting to know people. But I'm also like people watcher, ADHD trait. I listen to everything that everyone's saying, and you could hear at the end of matches people having little comments and stuff, and it was just like everything was unanimously positive, and that made me so happy, because it's what it deserved. The High-End Mickey James and Alex Windsor deserved a hell of a lot more than they got last year.
Yeah, they did.
But this year there was none of that, and that was also something that made me really happy.
Yeah, absolutely. To rectify that, they should just try and book Mickey James for, I'm being serious here, like a 229 or a Southampton. And I know that's maybe a bit biased saying that Southampton, but I mean, those kind of shows where you've got your bit more of your more RevPro crowd, and almost like just give them that opportunity again, and just be like,
I just feel sorry for her because I mean, if it were me, if I was her, I'd never want to come and work a RevPro show again.
no, same. And
I'd never want to work a British independent wrestling show again. That's what I should be saying because I don't think that was a RevPro thing.
No.
But yeah, to be honest, I didn't feel it was that dissimilar to some of the stuff that was happening in Cardiff for AEW this week.
Exactly.
The whole
I was trying to work
kind of going into business for themselves to cheer Big Bill instead of cheering Hook felt similar to Hardcore Country for me.
Or the Shibata moment,
giving the wrestlers the reactions they want, and it's to the detriment of the product. Because actually, I watched Collision back before I went to Wembley, and it's really jarring hearing the heel getting all the support, and the guy who's meant to be like Hook winning at Wembley and having his moment with Taz is meant to be like this really big, powerful moment.
Feel good moment,
If you look at the last episode of Dynamite, he was getting booed every time he did got any offense in.
Yeah.
And the one that really bothered me was Jay Lethal versus Katsuyori Shibata, because I don't know how much it came up on the Collision taping, because I can't remember watching this one back. I don't remember if I did or not. I didn't watch all of Collision. I picked bits because
I haven't seen it yet.
But the crowd, instead of paying any attention to Jay Lethal and Katsuyori Shibata, were just trying to get Satnam Singh and Sanjay Dutt, Sammy Guevara and Dustin Rhodes around ringside to wave them. You've got a Hall of Famer in Katsuyori Shibata. You've got an American Hall of Famer in Jay Lethal in the ring, and they were putting on like a wrestling clinic. Just literally, I'd say half the crowd weren't watching it.
Yeah,
I've had Satnam Singh to wave them, and I'd sat there baffled and bemused, if I'm honest. And just on Saturday, bringing it full circle, I was so glad that happened at RevPro last year. It didn't happen at RevPro this year.
Yeah, absolutely. That women's match was the second longest match of the night. Well deserved. Yeah, absolutely well deserved.
22 minutes, was it?
22:56, clocking in at 5 seconds more than Zack Sabre Jr. versus Hechicero. So we're dealing with fine margins here, but absolutely deserved. The hottest thing going in the company as far as I'm concerned.
Me too, mate. Me too.
So, David, I'm really keen to know your thoughts on the next match. Gabe Kidd beating Donovan Dijak in 10 minutes. I'm going to sum it up really quickly. Didn't like it, was bored, thought that this was going to be an absolute fucking banger. And I thought it was actively bad at times.
Oh, okay.
But
I'm not low on it like that.
I haven't watched it back, right? So I'm very much in the... This is how I was feeling watching it live after just watching the Cuthroat Collective. And maybe being at the point where I'm saying earlier, I could have done with an interval. So maybe that's souring me a bit on it. But
do you know what's fascinating is to say, and who, again, thinking back to last year, it's no coincidence that, if I remember the sequencing correctly, Alex, Mickey, and Hyan got that reaction because when they wrestled directly after Jacobs and Ishii. I'm pretty sure that's how the sequencing went last year, off the top of my head.
I think so.
This year, Dijak and Gabe Kidd, two massive names in the world of wrestling, especially given how dominant Gabe's been this year and how popular he is. Like, he was one of the MVPs of the G1. Had the unenviable task of following up the women, who just put on an absolute barnstormer. I have watched it back, and I enjoyed watching it back and enjoyed it at the time. When it was booked, I remember saying this could be a match of the weekend, like, contender.
Same. Yeah.
It wasn't. It wasn't at all. It wasn't even... I would say that it was probably if you were going to rank the 11 matches on the RevPro card, it doesn't make the top half, let alone match of the whole kind of like all in week. On the other hand, I feel like it did a really good purpose of you've just had a really long match and you're about to go into four matches where you know they're either going to go long or they're going to have high emotion or high stakes. As in, you've got the heavyweight championship belt, the tag belts, the women's belt, and Zack versus Hechicero.
Mm-hmm.
And this being 10 minutes, I thought was a good idea, keeping it short, not to burn the crowd out. And they did go at it hammer and tongs from the very start. There was quite a bit of wrestling outside the ring, which at a venue that big can be, if you were on the side where it was happening in front of you, you might have been enjoying it more than if you couldn't see it very well from where you were.
Yeah.
And maybe it could have done with like a couple of big, like draw your breath, gasp moments, which would have elevated it a little. I like, if I'm being kind of like fair and I'm not being like biased because I love RevPro, will I remember much about this match in a year's time? Probably not. Did I enjoy it at the time? Yes, I did. And am I glad that they did the match? Absolutely. Like, any time to get to see Gabe Kidd or Dijak is one that I'll thoroughly enjoy. And do I think that the show would have been better 10 minutes less without these guys? No. So I'm overall pleased. But if you were going to say there was a match on this card that I didn't enjoy very much, it doesn't shock me that it was this one, because I think we had such high hopes for it.
Yeah, I think that's very fair what you've said. Like, I had really high hopes going into this one. I think the Dijak versus Robbie X match from Summer Sizzler just teed me up. I mean, he had a great match against Michael Oku. I'm going to stress here because I know what people will say, because there's generally this kind of feeling that bigger guys sometimes aren't great at times. Like, but Dijak's one of those big guys who can, like, when he works with an opponent like Robbie X and like Michael Oku, he can play his part well, and we praise like what he brought to it.
Oh, so much so.
So bringing what Gabe has as well, I mean, a very different start. I was hoping that their styles would just mesh really well, but I'm really keen to see how this comes across back on demand when I watch it, because it could well be that
I'm
this
also
was
really
just
keen. I'm going to ask you at the start of next week's pod what you think of it, watching it again, because I'm curious to see.
Yeah, I'm curious as well, and it might just be that where I was in the show, the match it came after, and all of that, and the placement thing. But if I'm honest, I don't think like the placement could have been like, no matter what match you put in here. I think that was that last one was required so much emotion in a lot of ways and reactions that if you put one of your main story matches after that, I think it would have been hard. The only other match that I would have put into that slot where I thought could have worked really well and wouldn't have been impacted by it would have been Zack Sabre Jr. versus Hechicero. But I understand why they put that one where they did as well.
Listening to you talk about it, it reminds me a little bit of how I felt about Shingo versus Trent Seven at Uprising last year. No,
that was high stakes.
High stakes this year, wasn't it? Yeah. Where afterwards, I couldn't tell you why I wasn't particularly high on it, other than the fact that I felt a bit tired.
I can tell you why.
And I felt a bit kind of, it's a long show, and it is. I mean, you don't sit down and watch a 4.5 hour film, do you?
Here's the thing, mate.
It's a lot of. You're talking about basically watching it's like watching a test match rather than a one-day international. Like, you're talking about like quite a big commitment for concentration and emotional investment and everything like that. When I watched Shingo versus Trent back and I watched it in isolation, I was like, oh, wow, actually, I really enjoyed that. That was a really good match. But sometimes you can't help the human side of it coming out, where you're just feeling a bit drained. It's why I always say, for me, 7 or 8 match card is what I want from my wrestling. When it goes more than 7 or 8 matches, I always feel like something suffers. I understand why once a year you do it. Once a year, you have your WrestleMania, you have your All In, you have your RevPro anniversary show.
Yeah.
And I get that. And it's like you have to save up have an extra big lunch that day, and you have an extra, have that extra coffee, whatever it is you need. But I couldn't do it on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. I would be exhausted.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what, right? The match that followed that one, I think it was a good placement on the card. Sunshine Machine defeating Grizzled Young Veterans, new tag team champions. Now,
would you like to start?
You know what, right? I thought the match was really well done. Again, look, as a team, it's never going to be for me, right? And I understand why you go with them. People love them, like people gravitate towards them. This will not be a change that will maybe go, it'll be like, okay, Sunshine Machine match on the card. Not for me, but that's fine. Because I know that the rest of the card will fill out for what I need. So it will never impact me and my enjoyment. A lot of people love them. It'll be a big thing for RevPro. Great. That's what we want. We want people to be able to draw them in. I think it was the right decision from a business perspective, right? I said that from a booking perspective, I think it was the least interesting option. Okay? But there's a couple of things at play here. As we saw on Sunday, Grizzled Young Veterans debuted for AEW. So makes sense why maybe they've not been around as much with things, because maybe these conversations have been happening, so they didn't want to get injured.
Imagine if they were working a full indie schedule and got injured.
Exactly. And this is the why I took issue with people who were literally going for the jugular with Steph Care with WWE.
Like you don't get these big contracts come around many times in a professional wrestling career. Like we've seen, like we know that. Like we've watched enough documentaries, listened to enough podcasts, read enough autobiographies. We know that these have to be thought about really, really carefully. And I completely understand that from that perspective.
Absolutely. So I get that. But because it's not been around for a while, if you then split up Sunshine Machine, and when did you take the titles off Grizzled Young Veterans? Like, you've got to leave. And again, what happened afterwards kind of puts you on that trajectory of where you're going with it. I think, look, the Grizzled Young Veterans experiment had the potential to be really good. And I know Uprising, when we saw James Drake slide in to help, because I think Greedy Souls came out and tried to attack Gibson.
Yeah, Souls
attacked
Gibson, didn't they?
James Drake come running in, and it was like, right, this is setting up something really good potential for the year, and it hasn't lived up to what we hoped it would, for various reasons. So I think taking the belts and putting it on Sunshine Machine was great. I think this was a match where the placement on the card was perfect. Especially after, and again, this is why I think Gabe Kidd and Donovan Dijak was the perfect match just before that, for various, because that was a wrestling match. If it achieved what we thought, it wasn't one that's necessarily going to be trying to like get you to feel emotion as such. It's just going to be a big,
like a palate cleanser, wasn't it? Like after a really tasty kind of like, course on an 11-course dinner, as it turned out to be.
Absolutely. And this one really needed the emotion. That's what it was banking on. It was banking on you, and they did the near falls really, really well. There was a couple of times I thought it was done, and TK walked out, right? And I will not lie, right? I'd lost a bit of energy at one point during the night, like you said, get tired. I found my energy at this point, and everyone was going, no, and I
bet you were bloody cheering, weren't you?
I was like half.
Can I just point out to anyone who's watching this on YouTube rather than listening to it, I'm currently sitting here in the brand new Sunshine Machine t-shirt. Now, this brand new Sunshine Machine t-shirt was only available for purchase at shows this week. And George and I had conversations, and I'd said about how I'm not bringing any merch money to the wrestling this week. I've spent my budget on tickets, getting a last-minute all-in ticket as well, like stretch that. So George bought me this T-shirt. He bought me this T-shirt directly from Sunshine Machine themselves at Riot Cabaret on Thursday, and then texted me on Friday saying, "I got your little present, so you can have it at the Copper Box." And so I know that he's met them, he's bought the T-shirt, he's had that nice moment, he's given it to me, but I also knew full well that you'd be sitting there cheering if they broke up.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, guys, when I bought this T-shirt, I bought it directly from TK Cooper. And he said to me, he said, "I take it you'll be there on Saturday night." I was like, "Absolutely." I went, "Take a Sunshine Machine will be breaking up on Saturday night." And he said to me, "If I have it my way, yes." Now, and this is the thing that we like to talk about, right? Obviously, a little bit of banter, because if anyone follows Dave, you'll see the banter that TK has with Dave anytime Dave posts anything Sunshine Machine related. But do you know what? It played nicely into what happened on Saturday night. Because
I was unhinged.
I bet you were.
I talk about so I put a post up on yesterday, I think it was. I took one picture at All In. I wasn't there. I wasn't there for photos. I didn't have the view for photos. I took one picture, and it was Danielson, the streamers, the confetti, beautiful picture, and I put it next to a picture of Sunshine Machine holding up the belts. And I wrote above it my little caption, which was about how I will feel this like forever.
Yeah.
And I reacted to Sunshine Machine the way I react to West Ham when I've been to watch West Ham live. So the two extremes were, when Sunshine Machine won, I jumped up and down like a 12-year-old little Mark, bouncing around, desperate to hug anybody near me, waving my scarf around in the air like a little loon. On the other end of it, when TK got out the ring and was walking up the ramp, I screamed at the top of my lungs at him, "What the fuck are you doing? Get back in the fucking ring." And if he had loitered any longer, I think my favourite word that begins with a C and has 4 letters might have come out and been thrown at him. Because I was raging. Because if he had left and that's how it had happened, that would have been the hardest possible way for Sunshine Machine to end. Because that's not even like, you didn't even fight to the end. You gave up.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. There were 2 moments that I absolutely love, and fucking let's sing Chuck Mambo's praises. When TK was on the apron looking in, Zach Gibson and James Drake are looking back at him, and like the image here is, your boys beat, but we're not. So come and get in the ring, but you are getting in the ring. You are tired. You're battered. We're beating you, but you're on your own now because we've done him. And it's you versus us, and we're hungry lions. It was very much like, have you got the energy to face these 2 lions?
Yeah.
And Mambo looking at Teeks was how my little girl looks at me when she wants sweets, right? But he had it with all like the sweat and the pain and the glitter kind of like across his face being all like sprayed, and he looked weak and desperate and sad, really, really sad, pleading with his friend. And the thing that I love most, I think Chuck Mambo sold accidentally kicking TK Cooper legitimately better than I've ever seen any wrestler in my 37 years of being on this planet, and of those times, my probably like 25 years of being a wrestling fan, pretty much from birth until I was about 18, and then I kind of drifted away from it and came back to it in my 20s. Like, he went to kick James Drake. James Drake moved. He kicked TK. There was no kind of like shocked hands on the face moment. He legitimately went to help his friend. He helped him from falling down. He kept him up, and he looked like genuinely like desperately apologetic, and it was the realest of anything we watched all night.
Yeah.
Genuinely, that felt like how I would react to you if I'd accidentally hit you.
Yeah.
Like, it was proper emotional roller coaster, and it was the biggest suspension of disbelief that I've had in wrestling. And then it was immediately followed up the next day with the Bryan Danielson, and how I just lost myself in his story. To have those on consecutive nights, and I'm not like, oh my god, listen to this Mark who's like comparing an indie show to like 55,000 people, Bryan Danielson, the greatest story ever told in all of professional wrestling. Like, there will be people that might stumble across this and think I'm an absolute idiot. But for me, the emotional feeling I felt was the same on both nights.
Yeah, I get that, mate.
I am directly comparing the performance of Sunshine Machine and Grizzled Young Vets to Swerve and Danielson, because they elicited from me the exact same response at the exact same level. The difference is Sunshine Machine I've been watching week in, week out, live in front of me, and Danielson and Swerve I've been watching week in, week out on the other side of the world through a TV set. But the Sunshine Machine boys have done it on a shoestring budget, in terms of, you know, being like independent wrestlers with like real lives, and working, you know, 6 shows in the space of a week. And, you know, Danielson and Swerve have done it with all of the possible assets and support you could possibly ask for, and so much time to carefully plot every little bit of it. And that's not to take anything away from them, because they did it amazingly well. But to get both of them, like 2 genuine all-timer moments, I'll remember forever.
That's amazing. And look, this is what we're talking about with wrestling, right? And again, over this weekend, I've been debating this back and forth with people who have been talking about Bryan Danielson at Wembley versus Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. And people go, no, this was better because he beat Evolution in one night and it was at WrestleMania. No, this was better because he did it in front of his family after he was forced to retire in the main event at Wembley, right? Either is fine. Like, either can be his best moment ever if that's his best moment to you, because it's the emotion.
Which one, for me, is just which one made you as an individual feel the most.
Exactly, which is why your reaction to the Sunshine Machine match, if anyone says he's an idiot for comparing it, you're not, because that is the truth, that for you, they both just made you feel at such a visceral level. You're not out here saying, objectively, this match was better or as good as that one from a technical standpoint.
I've always said, I'm not in a position to judge the best, because I don't fucking know anything about wrestling.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
I know as much about wrestling as someone who sits and watches it a lot knows, but I've never been in a wrestling ring. I've never taken a bump. I've never put a match together or anything like that. Yeah. And I never want to. That's not me at all. No. I just want to enjoy it. In the same way that I would never talk about who like the best footballers are. I would just talk about who my favourite footballers were.
Absolutely, yeah. And
even then, that is slightly different, because in football you can actually look at statistics.
Yeah, you can objectively.
Whereas in wrestling, it's like, well, who's been booked to be the best wrestler ever?
Absolutely. What I would say,
for me, it's all about the subjectivity. It's about the feeling that is generated in you in that moment by those artists.
Yeah, and because you're there week in, week out, and like you said, they're on a shoestring budget, right? They do not have the bells and whistles. They do not have the luxuries of big video packages to recap, capture the best. Like, don't get me wrong, we have great photographers on this scene. Sarah Hatch, RevPro, and James Musselwhite are 2 of the greatest photographers out there, and both of them were out there to get those photos on Saturday night. They can get these images, but when you're talking about these big companies like AEW, WWE, who have got cameras everywhere. Probably got one stuck coming out of the referee's arse at some point to get the angle, because they seemingly have every single shot available to them. They can build these big dynamic video packages. These guys don't have that. The tools that they have is their social media, and they have you sitting in your seat while they're there doing it in front of you, and they have made you feel. And the way this all went down, it just felt like a real love letter to British professional wrestling, and that's how it ended. And it was a lovely feel-good moment for everyone. And I think it was, whether they're a team that generally I am into or not, they are the team that for a long time they held down tag team wrestling on the UK scene. And
they're a huge part of why I fell in love with RevPro in the first place.
And you're not the only person I've heard say that. I've heard a lot of traveling fans go, I've never heard of Sunshine Machine before. Now I'm going to watch them going forward. So it was a lovely moment of vindication.
I genuinely believe they are up there with the best tag teams in the world, in the sense of, like I say, I'm not an expert on the in-ring stuff, but their in-ring stuff looks really good. I'm always convinced by that, but in the way that they can get a crowd to react to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Final point I'm going to make on this, TK still needs to turn on Chuck. Right. So, next match. Now, we'll talk about shocks of the night. All right?
Mate.
This was the shock of the night for me. But also...
It was in the sense that, I mean, do you remember when we previewed it last week? We were kind of running a little bit long. We knew we were approaching that 3-hour mark, and we were like, Dani Luna versus Mina Shirakawa.
Yeah.
Dani Luna? Yeah, Dani Luna. Yeah, Dani Luna. Quick word about Dani Luna and Mina Shirakawa. On to the next match.
Yep. But you know what the funny thing is? We both made, when we were previewing it beforehand, when Safire was still there, we were saying it makes complete sense to take the title off and put it onto a bigger name for a bit of time, because Dani's run was kind of getting to that stage where it feels like she's had it for a good amount of time, and now feels like it could be an okay time to take the title from her. But we were basing that Safire scenario on the fact that she was going to Germany. Mina is not. You've got to imagine, like, she's already back in the States, I presume by now. She's not going over to Germany. She would have been announced if she was going over to Germany. So now it makes you wonder, going, well, what happens now?
Where do we next see Mina Shirakawa? Do we see her in the 229?
Well,
we see her in the 1865 at some point. We're going to see her.
We've got to see her at some point.
Maybe she's going to be, I don't know.
So
I don't know, but I don't think she's going to be around for a long time. But I do think it's going to be a really, really good time.
Absolutely. I remember when we announced, or saw Global Wars being announced, right? And someone asked a question about what promotions is Global Wars going to factor in, and the way it was made it sound was said partners, right? So I was like, do Stardom, because they're technically New Japan, I understand, like they're owned by the same parent company. So I was like, do they fall under that? And of course, while Mina is Stardom, there's always the feeling that once that contract's in, that she's AEW, which is also another partner.
It's really interesting that on the official RevPro preview, Andy introduced Mina as a Stardom wrestler, and he referred to reaching out to Stardom to secure her booking.
Yeah, interesting.
He mentioned AEW as in she has appeared for AEW, but it was never alluded to in any way that it was he had worked with Tony Khan to get Mina Shirakawa in the way he had worked with Tony Khan to get Dante Martin.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, really interesting to see. I said earlier, I want the Cuthroat. Well, I said ages ago, I want the Cuthroat Collective to take the belt from at the time from Dani Luna, now from Mina Shirakawa. I feel like that's the best thing to do. I don't want it to go on Alex Windsor. She does not need it. Like, she has held the belt for so long. I think there is a more interesting story with her not having the belt and somebody else in the team having it, and her being a bit conflicted. I think anybody else in the team could have it. So pick your favourite. I'm picking Lizzy Evo. I think that she would be brilliant with it. Nina's had her shot already. Safire doesn't need it. Safire's got a great little storyline of being like Alex Windsor's kind of like little protege, little sister. Mercedes Blaze, I feel like, is someone again who, like, you know, take the pick between her and Lizzy for it. But I feel like she is. I love Mercedes when she's on the outside of the ring and she's being the, and I mean this in the politest and like nicest way possible, but being the bitch around the ringside, just like barking at people and being horrible. Like, I love that side of what she does. And if I have to pick somebody from the Cuthroat Collective on who I want to see more singles matches from, it's Lizzy Evo.
Yeah. I'm interested because part of me thinks put the belt on them, on one of them now. Part of me thinks, look, can we just look at some of the stories for 6 months and then go with that? Because this is me wanting to Cutthroat Collective stay around for a long time. So whatever direction they go, I'll be happy with. Because either the Cutthroat Collective get the belt or the Cutthroat Collectives get another storyline and then we build onto a title reign down the future. But much like you...
Just think, like, we haven't had hardly any singles matches yet between Cutthroat Collective members and Team RevPro members.
Yeah.
There's so many. Like, there's like a year's worth of booking there in just some, like, cool singles matches between those guys and the wider women's division, because, you know, Dani Luna hopefully isn't gone forever. Hopefully she's still going to be in and out of Rev Pro.
Yeah,
you know, she hasn't been a weekly Rev Pro wrestler the lot for 2024, but she's never been too far away. So hopefully that will continue. So yeah, I really want to see so much more of what we have seen so far. Like I said earlier, it's our favourite thing in Rev Pro alone.
Absolutely. If we're not going the Cutthroat Collective, the person I'd like to take the belt from Mina is Kanji. Because I think
I'd like Kanji to definitely get it. But I'd like it to be. I'd like her to take it from a proper heel. I really want a really good feel good moment for Kanji.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. But interesting, very, very interesting. If I'm honest, I don't remember a huge ton about the actual match itself, just because I think, I was such a range of emotions. The tiredness was kicking in, kind of a bit of that. But that moment, Dani tapping was just like, what?
I feel like it's one of those matches where the result kind of took all the attention. And it was quite easy to forget the details of how we got to that result, because it was like such a shock. I've not seen many Mina Shirakawa matches. I've only seen her in AEW. I've never watched Stardom before. Said before, like, I'd love to. There's just not enough hours in the day or space in my brain for more information. So I was really impressed with the quality of her work. I thought that she looked really, really good. I liked the kind of styles clash and personality clash between the two of them. And yeah, it's a lot of the mat stuff is kind of what I sort of look back on a lot. It was they were sort of like the most significant moments. Those figure four leg locks, and the fact that Dani got to the ropes from the first one and then she so quickly got her back in it for the second one was what was like, oh my god, is she actually going to do this? And then
Absolutely. No, I'm with you on all of that, mate. Just a genuinely shocking moment, and a great run as women's champion from Dani Luna.
And from one technical finish to a technical masterpiece.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you enjoy it as much as I did?
Yeah, I'm not going to say too much on this because I feel
it's
like
quite hard to.
It's quite hard to look. I'm going to be looking at the running time. We're already at 2 hours 43 minutes in this this review, and I think no matter what I say on this, I'll be doing it a disservice.
I agree, mate. I've watched it twice.
Yeah,
and I find it interesting. Like, looking through my photos, I had less photos for this match than any of the other matches.
Same. I was intent on this.
I was just kind of like in awe of it. That just magicians, aren't they?
So good, yeah.
It really, I know it's such a cliche, but it was like those YouTube videos or Instagram reels. I get them pop up all the time, where it's someone who's like got a blank canvas and some paint, and they're just throwing paint onto the canvas. They're not like doing brush strokes, and then they'll create like a masterpiece out of what looks like chaos.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what I felt like this was. It was two artists who don't paint traditional pictures. They do abstract art that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not abstract art that's weird and kind of, I don't really understand what I'm looking at. The sort of abstract art where you don't fully understand what you're looking at, but you know that it's going to end up beautiful.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like a mosaic sort of thing, where you're kind of like trying to work out, or for people of a similar age to us, do you remember Art Attack?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was
And
thinking of when you were saying
the little fella, the fella would go out and he'd be doing that big scene, and you could just see him putting stuff down, and then they'd zoom out, and you'd finally see what he's created.
Yeah, you can only see the parts.
You know what you're watching is special and impressive. You don't fully understand what you're watching because it's so technically accomplished. It's not like anything you normally watch.
Yeah.
And when it all comes to a head, you're just sort of like standing and clapping and like smiling.
Yeah. So this was my joint favorite match of the night. For two like distinct reasons. One, this was my favorite match of the night in terms of just like in ring. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the main event was great. It was in ring and emotion, but this I felt was the strongest match purely in ring. I thought it was a brave decision putting it on the card where it is, because I was like, oh, these lads in the main event have got something to go on up against afterwards, which is why I said I'd have maybe put it earlier. But hey, look, the match is.
We talked about maybe opening the show.
Yeah,
which,
I think so.
In hindsight, now we've had the show, I think would be the stupidest thing to do ever.
Absolutely.
I think like they sequenced the card perfectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was a really nice juxtaposition from the main event, which meant that putting it on in the semi-main meant that Oku and Jacobs didn't have to follow it because they were presenting something completely different.
Exactly. Now, I remember, because obviously this, like I said to you, I mentioned at these parts of the night, I was starting to feel the tiredness kicking a little bit. Been a busy old day, hadn't slept very well, in hotel, all of that sort of stuff. I think at this point I've been up since like 5 o'clock in the morning. So I was like a bit tired. And at certain points in the night, my wife was like, "You're right." I'm like, "No, I'm just conserving energy for the main event. Like, I've only got so much I can give." And I was sitting really close forward, and she thought there was something wrong with me. I was like, "No, I'm studying." Basically, I felt like I was studying the match. And I said, for me, this is where the value in these seats that we pay, like, I mean, to be fair, my seat wasn't massively expensive, but where I picked for it, the value of it comes because I watch everything. I can see the little hooks coming round to grab a heel and stuff, and you can see it just in such fine detail that when you're doing a match where it's big corner spots, I go, yeah, punch you in the face, and the rest is going, oh, I'm flailing everywhere. Right? You're playing that from the front row to the back of the arena.
Yeah.
But with these matches, you're not. And it can be very hard to get people enthused. And so that's where I found the real value. And I said, for me, what makes these matches great is not the holds. It's the reversals. How do they get out of the hold and put in something? They were absolute magicians. All I'm going to say on this is just go and watch it. Get signed up 100%. To www.RevProOnDemand.com. Go and watch this match, because I mean, every match that we mentioned so far, go and watch. But this one, if you've got time for one at this point, go and watch this one, because it's just special.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how. So I know loads of people that listen to this will be like, "Who gives a shit about Dave Meltzer ratings? It's the opinion of one guy," and things like that. I find them fascinating to look at. Even I don't always agree with them, but I do find them fascinating, because I do think that I more often than not agree. I'm not very often. I can't think of a time when he said something was crap and I thought it was excellent, or he said something was excellent and I thought it was crap. We're always, very, very close. And I find them fascinating, again, stats, numbers, maths. But I'm curious to see if he goes for all 5 stars. I can't imagine it'll be very far away.
Yeah,
I can't see it being less than 4.5.
I don't know how this goes up against their one that they had previously in Mexico.
No,
but I know that was a
purposely didn't
5-star,
watch it.
wasn't it? Yeah.
I've been sent it by loads of people. Loads of people had like found a copy of it on, or like downloaded a copy illegally or whatever, and sent it to me and been like, "I think you might want to watch this before we go." And it was always like, thanks, and me not actually admit that I wasn't ever going to watch it because I wanted to watch this live. I'll happily watch it now.
Yeah.
But I wanted this to be my first taste of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And that brings us nicely to the main event, right?
Whew, what a match. What
First
a match.
on the entrances, very, very different.
Yeah.
As in, Jacobs obviously was very different. He looked different. He had a different theme song. And Oku and Amira walked like straight to the ring, eyes focused on the ring, didn't take in the crowd, didn't do their usual geeing up the crowd. It felt tense from the very beginning in the best possible way.
Absolutely. I mean, that entrance from Jacobs, like when it started, I wasn't expecting it to go the whole route, if I'm honest. I was expecting it to be like
thought it was going to be a little tease of Bon Jovi and then the Luke Jacobs hit. And I'm so glad it didn't because it really, really hit.
It just added something, didn't it? And the actual cowboy look as well. And it was a bit like, what is going on here? But it just worked, didn't it? And it reminded me of like, I can't remember everything, but it's like your Stan Hansons and stuff like that. He just looked like a tough little fucker.
That's a bit cool.
And yeah, and that was kind of like the vibe I was getting from it, the music, the whole lot. Ethan Allen being his corner man. And what was really nice is just starting...
And properly like he was his corner man, right? He didn't get involved in the match at all in any way. Neither did Amira. There was no overproduction. There was no like...
Yeah, the ones... Sorry, carry on.
No. I was that. I basically, it didn't sound like I had, but I'd come to the end of the point of just. He was the corner man, and Amira was the like doting girlfriend more than the manager.
Yeah, well, the one spot that I noticed from both of them was the same spot. Was when I think Oku had Jacobs in the half crab, and Amira was basically like, I'm presuming, I couldn't work out what she was saying, but I was presuming she was telling him to tap. And then you had Ethan Allen telling him not to tap. And I thought that was a nice little spot there. This is a match that I really don't remember a lot of the details on. I was running on pure adrenaline and...
Yeah, I get that.
You know, massive Luke Jacobs fan here, right? But I'm also a massive Michael Oku fan, right? And like this is the match of when... If you said to me that this time last year, I'd been like, I'd have been in the corner of Luke Jacobs, and that's it, right? And what Michael Oku's done this last year for me, in terms of like just how much he's made me care, like genuinely, even though I know this is like, in case anyone doesn't know, spoilers, this isn't real, okay? But it made me feel like it was, and I just didn't want to see him lose because I also
how I'm like really adamant where I pick who I'm cheering for. And I cheer for that person. I changed with this match. And I changed because they made me change. It was... So there's two points I really want to make. One, this was a New Japan paced match. The way if it's 35 minutes, when you watch it back, you can kind of watch it, but put a stopwatch on. And note where the match is after 10 minutes. Note where it is after 20 minutes. And then note it 25, 30, 35. The way that they built the drama and it escalated. And the way they managed the crowd. Like the crowd psychology was unbelievable. Because I would say at the start, it was 80-20 Oku to Jacobs. when Jacobs was busted up and Mike was sitting over him, hammering the punches in, like they always do to, get the blood pumping and get the blood out. We know what they're doing. But he did it with such malice that the crowd booed him.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did the Bret Hart, Steve Austin, lock the submission hold in, blood pouring down the face, screaming into the camera.
Yeah.
At that point, we could have gone full Michael Oku heel turn, and that's what I thought was happening. I thought we were getting full Oku heel turn, and there was a part of me that was a bit like, I'm not sure how the crowd's going to take it. Is this the place to do a heel turn? But I was also like lost in it of being like, oh my God, it's like you got so many thoughts going through your head. But they reined it back in. Mm-hmm. They did just enough to make sure that at the end, when Jacobs won, he got unanimously cheered. And you'll notice Oku and Amira got out the ring and got out of there quite quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's one photo that I took that I really like. It's not even like the cleanest shot I've got. It's not my favourite in terms of like but just the poignancy of Jacobs in the ring giving his speech, his I'm the champion speech. And Oku and Amira are silhouetted because the focus is on Jacobs having a hug in front of him, 6 foot below him because he's in the ring and they're on the floor.
Yeah.
And it's just this really, really like, he's the top man now.
Yeah. Yeah, he really is.
They are, and Oku literally like tweeted immediately after the match, didn't he? Luke Jacobs is the best wrestler in Europe.
Yeah. It's
fun. Wrestler in the world. Whatever, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And it was very much like a passing of the torch.
Yeah.
For, the face of the company, from one face of the company to another. I genuinely believe that this was one of the greatest professional wrestling matches I've ever watched in my life.
Yeah. I watched
it back a second time, I'm even more convinced of that.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch this one back.
If this isn't rated 5 stars or above, I will be shocked. Because it's the emotional journey of it is one thing. Not just because we're marks who are there all the time and we fucking love it. Not just that. But the whole crowd travelled a journey with that match.
Yeah.
I think there were 3,700 people, 3,800 people, however many there were, of which let's conservatively say there's 2,500 people there because it's all in weekend.
Mm-hmm.
They were all on that journey.
Yeah.
They all went on it. And when you watch it back, you realise that, everything they did elicited an emotion. They battered the shit out of each other. Everything looked, they sold it beautifully. I genuinely I feel like this match is closer to Oku versus Ospreay at high stakes than it is Oku versus Ospreay in Southampton.
Yeah.
And it's then a case of, is it bang in the middle of those two matches where Oku versus Ospreay at York Hall is, or is it even above that? I feel like this was a really, 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 really special match. For me, and I mean this genuinely, match of the weekend.
Nice. Yeah.
And, you've got all in there with Tony Storm and Mariah May, MJF and Will Ospreay, Bryan Danielson versus Swerve Strickland. I genuinely believe Luke Jacobs versus Michael Oku better than Hechicero versus, in terms of my favourite match, how I felt during it.
Yeah.
This was the overall number one match of the week.
Nice. Like I said, I'm so looking forward to watch this one back. When I say it's a blur, it was a blur in the best way possible because I was just lost. Nothing about what happened to me on that night was objectively like kind of looking at things and going, this is great. And like, as you're saying things, memories are starting to come into focus in my brain a little bit, actually, because I just remember the whole night, all I was doing was cheering for one of these guys, right? And I was flip-flopping the night because I wanted them both to get what they deserved, right? Because they've both fucking worked hard. And when the crowd behind me were chanting for Michael, I was going full pelt for Luke. So much that my voice was wrecked on Sunday morning. I wrecked my voice completely. And the bit that you mentioned, I just came into focus there. And I was thinking the same about the heel turn, because I've always said that Michael Oku's superpower is making you think that he is one of the best wrestlers in the world, while spending the majority of the match getting the shit kicked out of him, and still somehow overcoming all of that in a way that makes sense. Michael Oku was taking charge of violence.
Mate, that hypersonic missile that he hit on Jacobs, the spot where they ran the ropes like 3 times because they ducked each other's clotheslines.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, Jacobs is going to take his fucking head off.
Mm-hmm.
I think Oku did it to Jacobs.
Yeah.
And it was so convincing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was just this moment of like, oh my God, like, I cannot believe that he has generated that much power from a man who is typically got, like, you know, seen as having quite a small frame.
Yeah.
It was the triple frog splashes absolutely had me that was going to be the finish.
Yeah.
I loved how Jacobs got out of the arched back half crab, because no one's ever done that. Zozaya, MJF, and someone else, and I can't remember who the someone else is. Maybe someone who listens can let me know. There's 3 people that have escaped the arched back half crab, but all 3 of them did it by getting to the ropes. Jacobs did it by literally like pulling Oku off him. As Oku arched back, he grabbed his head and like pulled, like with power and technique, pulled himself out of it. He escaped it without the need of the ropes, which I thought was a lovely little touch. Just the lariats, the shots around the head, the headbutts, they were just some of the stiffest looking shots I've ever seen in a professional wrestling match. Watching it back made me feel more of it. There were times in this match that reminded me of Walter versus Ilya Dragunov from NXT UK, when it was the empty arena in the BT Sports, and they put on that 5-star match, which was just disgustingly violent. And I'm not saying this was that level of disgusting violence, because it wasn't in. I mean, it was, but not in a directly comparable way. It was different types of violence, but some of those strikes were up there with them. Go back and watch it. Go back and watch it, and relive it. And everybody that was there live, watch it back. You'll have so much fun.
Yeah,
RevProOnDemand.com, £7.40 a month, bargain.
That's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow.
12-month fee for, I think, £60-something, because that's what I do. I have
something like that, because I think I'm planning on doing the same.
Makes it about £6 a month, I think. Bargain.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm planning on watching it back tomorrow. They had me multiple times thinking Michael was going to win, Luke was going to win. At one point, I went, Michael's winning. He's winning. And then about 2 minutes later, Luke won. Phenomenal pro wrestling match, but I think I need to watch it again to really hit home. But this is.
I know we had a question about who will be the first challenger.
And why was it? That was from Sharon. Why would it be Mills?
It's from Sharon, isn't it? Who fucking loves Connor Mills, and said, "And why is it Mills?" It's interesting. Had we not seen the ELP Zozaya match graphic go drop whilst we were on this pod, I would have said Zozaya, because Zozaya was the last person to pin Jacobs. I still think that will happen. I just don't know if it'll be the first one. Although, actually, in saying that, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Zozaya beat ELP on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like ELP is a big import name, but within his whole story arc, even in his own home company of New Japan, he can definitely lose. He's finding himself after a difficult year. Like that's his whole thing at the moment. So I would say Zozaya will be the one, and then Global Wars main event, him versus Ishii for the belt.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm looking at where we are now. Well, Global Wars is a month and a half away, so there has to be a challenger in there. If we're going for a challenger just to challenge, Zozaya makes sense.
Yeah,
he's got a victory over Jacobs. That makes sense. Once we've got Ishii out of the way with, and we're talking about the next big program, like the next big story, I think RKJ after that.
Yep. And if we can run back Gabe Kidd, please.
Yeah.
That match last year in the 229 where Gabe Kidd literally threw up at ringside afterwards because they destroyed each other for 20 minutes. Yeah. Is one of my favourite matches of last year, but it's also one I didn't get to be there live for. So I would love to get to see that again in person.
Let's make this the run of piss and vinegar.
Oh, so much so, mate. Let's yeah. I wouldn't say Jacobs is a piss and vinegar wrestler, but I'd love to see him wrestle some piss and vinegar wrestlers. If it's going to be a face run, you can never have too much piss and vinegar in wrestling.
No. And I think that concludes then, doesn't it, for the wonderful show at the Copper Box. Just a great show. And obviously this week we've got the 2 Berlin shows coming up. Dave, I was just having a look there to see if Sunday gave us any insight for Jacobs. It doesn't, but we have had 2 more matches announced for the 229.
There's one I'm interested to know if there's a woman been announced.
There is.
That we haven't seen for a long time.
There is, and it's a woman that I was saying to my wife on Friday night. This is one of my favourite women's wrestlers, and I'm really disappointed that she never gets booked for RevPro. I was going as much as going, it is disgusting that she's not booked for RevPro. She should be in RevPro. I don't know why she's not in RevPro. She bloody well should be. Millie McKenzie is coming to RevPro.
I knew it. We're sitting here, so, pulling back the curtain, I record on my phone, and all my little notifications are popping up, and because as I run the RevPro Instagram channel, I get all of their notifications, and it came up saying Millie McKenzie has mentioned you in a story. And I thought, why is Millie McKenzie mentioned RevPro in a story? Surely that means she's booked for the 229. So I'm delighted. I've never seen Millie McKenzie. Who's she fighting?
Kanji, which is yeah.
I love that.
I am.
What's the other match that's been dropped?
The other match. So ELP versus Zoya, right?
Yeah.
Said to be nailed on match of the night, and then Millie McKenzie and Kanji got dropped. I was like, potentially nailed on match of the night, and then Leon Slater versus Jay Joshua gets dropped.
Oh mate, there's always this fear, right? After you've had a massive show of being like, has everyone still got it in the tank? Not the company and not the wrestlers, but the fans. Have the fans got their money in the bank? Have they got the energy in their gut and the voice in their mouths to go do one more show? And this Sunday, what a perfect way for me to finish my 6 weeks holiday. I'm back at school on Monday. That's going to be perfect. There will be no Sunday night blues when you're sitting in the 229 watching Leon Slater and Jay Joshua, Millie McKenzie and Kanji, and ELP versus Zozaya. Quality. Can't wait to see the rest of the card.
I'm so glad I've got my ticket because that is going to be a great night. And again, Jay Joshua appearing in RevPro, and I've got a ticket to that show. I'll have seen all of his matches live so far. That's a streak that I don't mind continuing.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Right, mate. Well, you know what? Yeah, well, on that note, at 3 hours and 8 minutes for bumper episode that, again, we said at the beginning of the night, we're going to structure this in a way that makes it that we probably won't be talking for quite as long. I just want to say thank you. If you've stuck around to this point, thank you so much for listening. Thank you to everyone that has commented on the videos, who has shared the videos, who's liked the videos, who has genuinely come up to me at the weekend. I want to give a shout out to Wee Bob. So this will make he will know it's a guy that is I've loved his username just from when he started following us. Has always asked us questions. And actually asked the question tonight as well. Met him on Saturday. It was really lovely. He came and introduced himself to me. A number of people have said how much they're enjoying what we're doing. Means the world to us, especially after a very long weekend of a lot of great wrestling.
Yeah, I got to meet Will Warrener and Marty Colliver on at the weekend, who I'd never met before, but have always been supporters of the stuff we do on the pod. So it was lovely to see them and get to shake their hands and thank them in person. So yeah, thank you ever so much appreciated.
Right.
Give us a like,
mate.
Put a comment, even if the comment's a thumbs up. Does the algorithm? That's all we want. Get the algorithm going, and then that way more people will get told about RevPro, and it means that we will get more opportunities in the future to see amazing talent that, you know, cost Andy Corden a fair few quid.
Absolutely. And Dave did mention earlier about the Michael Oku arching crab spot, about how there was one wrestler, they can't quite remember who it was, that escaped the hold. If you like our video on YouTube, comment who it was and send me a DM on Twitter, I will personally buy you a Freddo. Can't say fairer than that. Right, on that note, been a wonderful episode. Catch you all next time.